What's happening, everyone? It's Tuesday. It's 9:30. You know what that means? Yeah, that's right. That means it's time for your old pal Jason to just get deep into the philosophical weeds with himself, unless one of y'all shows up and starts talking to me. So let's see. Yeah, as we are waiting for people to filter in, I am going to I actually did all the stuff that I'm supposed to do. I posted this on Blue Sky. I posted it in the Discord. I think I silenced everything. Actually, let's double check that. We're gonna just silence this until the end of this event. We're gonna head over here, make sure I'm in streamer mode. Look at me being so responsible. One of these days, I'm gonna get all of this stuff right on the same try, right? And like the whole thing's gonna be done before you show up here, and I'm gonna launch this show like a professional. Today's not that day. So, yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about just businesses in general. I've been thinking a lot about the path that I took. I've talked about it at length, but I guess the high level, so that if anybody asks, we can skip back to this part of the video. The high level is, I've had this very wandering career. I started out as a musician. As I was a musician, we didn't have enough money to hire any help with promo, design, dev, any of that. So I learned how to do those things. When the band broke up, I realized I'd kind of accidentally built enough of a skill set to start an agency. Did that for 10 years, burned out super hard to the point that my beard started falling out in clumps. Crashed out really hard, like fled to Alaska, and spent a few weeks there with like no internet whatsoever, no ability to reach the outside world, and then spent 2 years living out of a bag in different countries around the world, working a single contract that I think had me on about 6 hours a week of actual work, like just so burned out to a crisp. A couple years later, I felt like I was recovered, wanted to take a job that didn't require me to be in charge of everything. So I joined IBM. I was some kind of not a principal, but like whatever the thing below a principal is. Also not staff. They had a weird name for it. So I was like a front end architect there, worked on IBM Cloud, got into some open source stuff, working in the GraphQL space. That led me to Gatsby, where I built Gatsby's community programs. I built the DevRel program and a lot of their developer experience and kind of community stuff, which got me recruited by Sarah Drasner at Netlify, where I worked as a principal developer experience engineer. And ultimately that led to me becoming the VP of developer experience, where I started experimenting with more and more video. I'd been doing streaming as part of being a DevRel, but I had not done higher production stuff. So when I became a VP, I started pursuing more of that high production value stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. And so in 22, I left Netlify to start Code TV, where the high value production was the entire point. And since then, I've been able to launch Web Dev Challenge. I've been able to run Heat. I've been able to up the production value of everything that I work on. If you look at this show versus what it was in 2018 when I was live streaming, it's a pretty night and day difference. And I get to do things like Web Lunch, where I sit down with people from the community and just kind of learn these amazing things from them. All of that has led to me being here today, where I've sort of made this series of choices that feel nonsensical, musician to agency to like corporate cog to startup life to completely jumping industries to video production, all of which just kind of seem like, man, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just kind of stay on the path you were on? And the answer, I guess, is that I've just sort of realized over the course of my life that all of the things that felt safe weren't, and that the only real safe path was to do something that I had control over, I guess, and that at least if it was going to go bad, it was going to go bad because it was my fault. So my unconventional career behind, kind of out of the way here. And also, what's up? How you doing, Cubic? Let's go to Paterfamilias. Can't be talking about this the day after I bought a new domain. Exactly. What's up, Vinny? How you doing? What's up, Michael? What's going on, Bridge? Twitch says I'm starting. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So I got to fix my Twitch. I haven't looked at Twitch in a very long time, so that's probably wrong. I'm going to fix this Discord thing right now. So everybody, hold with me for just 1 second while I edit this event, because I've been meaning to do that. I keep forgetting to do it. And I'm so frustrated by like all of the silliness of this. Can I edit all events in this series? Can I not do it while it's happening? Oh, this sucks. Okay, so I apparently can't edit this while it's happening. Let me see if it'll let me edit these ones. So it starts at 9:30, because why would they have time zone support? Like, that wouldn't make any sense. It's fine. Um, and I'm gonna save this event. And so it's at least fixed for the next week, and then I'll be able to do all of them once this one's not running anymore. On Twitch though, man, I haven't looked at dashboard.twitch.tv. Am I logged in? I'm not. Can I be? Do I have that password still? I do. This is good news. Okay. And then how does one set up your schedule? Community, content, video producer thing. They do not make this stuff easy. Channel, schedule. So we're going to demos and QA. That's going to be at 9:30 for 2 hours and 30 minutes every Tuesday. Look at me go. Okay, we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. Office hours with Jason Lengstorf. This is all code, career, happiness, and okay. So Twitch should be accurate now. Good. And is that actually saved? Looks like it's actually saved, I think. So yeah, I will do my best to remember to fix the rest of the streams going on. Could we have all of them sync with Google Calendar? Yeah, you'd think, but yeah. Anyways, my beard came out in clumps. Yes, exactly. Like I think so. There's obviously, there's no like medical consensus on this stuff, and so this is a little bit of me doing self-diagnosis. But what I know is I was working 90-hour weeks. I was really not good at sales, and so I was doing projects where I would build a full website with they'd have forums and quite a bit of functionality. And I was building those sites for like $3,500, and I had contractors. So as you can imagine, my take home, I was maybe taking home 35, 40 grand a year. Right. And so I like really lived paycheck to paycheck, or more specifically invoice to invoice. And one of the moments where I realized that I had like things were pretty rough is the first time I went to Europe. I planned the trip because I had invoices coming, and I'd worked on these big projects and all these things. And then when I left for the trip, I was going with a good friend of mine, this guy named Nate. And Nate was doing well. Nate was like the first one among our friend group to find a job that paid like good adult money. So Nate was in good shape. I was not. My invoices got delayed. One of the projects wasn't finishing, and then once you get to the end of a project, you just kind of know that invoice isn't going to get paid for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 30 days, sometimes 60 days, depending on the type of company. This was the type of company that should have been a week to 2 weeks. So I'm in Europe. And for the first half of the trip, I was fine. But then, kind of running low on funds, thought this invoice was going to clear, wasn't clearing. And so I remember just kind of looking at Nate and saying like, hey, I'm going to have to get you back for everything from this point on. And he was like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. And so the last 2 days of the trip, though, what the original plan was, we were going to go back to, I think we were in Amsterdam, and we were going to fly out of Amsterdam to go back home. But Nate got a call from this company that wanted to hire him. And so they said, we've got a team offsite happening. It would be great if you could meet everybody. Could you leave from Amsterdam to come straight to Toronto and do it a day earlier than you were planning on? And so Nate ended up, he just kind of told me, he's like, hey, the hotel room's already paid for. So if you can take care of yourself for food, I gotta go. And so he bailed. And I had $8 in my bank account to last me 2 days. And, I knew I had already kind of accounted for, like, I knew how to get back to the airport, and I had a room. So theoretically, I didn't have to do anything. I could just sit still, but like I needed to eat something and all that. And I remember going and buying an $8 pizza and stretching that out over the course of 2 days. And it wasn't like it was a little pizza, it was $8, but it was like that was like I owned that agency and I had been working these insane hours and all this kind of stuff. And I just realized, like, man, I don't make any money. I am working constantly. I'm always stressed. I'm always chasing people. And I'd like delegated all the stuff that I liked. So I had contractors that were doing most of the design and development. I wasn't actually getting to do that stuff anymore. I was just on sales and admin and chasing people and doing content and just stuff I didn't enjoy. So anyways, this was, I think, the end of 2013 or something. I had been doing this now for, going on close to 10 years. Right. And I think like 2007 was when I got really, really serious. So I guess it was like 6 years of serious agency work. Um, and I remember just kind of, my then girlfriend looked at me and was like, "What's going on with your beard?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "There's a thing." And so I go and I look in the mirror and there's this like kind of like white patch. I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, that feels like, why does that feel like it's fine?" Like it was sort of like all the hair had gone finer than the rest of my beard and it was turning white, and then it all fell out, and then I just had this like bald patch, and then over time that bald patch expanded until it kind of got up over the side of my chin here. I had another one over here, and I couldn't grow a beard anymore. And so there is an era of time, like I guess this would have been in 2012 was when it started, and 2013 is when it like finished. For 2013 I like had a mustache because I couldn't grow a full beard. And like, I'm not a face that makes sense for a mustache. It's not a good time. So, anyways, I started to realize like my body is physically breaking down here, and my proof, because the medical diagnosis is like there is no known cause for what was called alopecia barbadensis. I think it is beard hair loss is the short term. I crashed out. I sold, like, when I say sold my agency, what I mean is I got somebody to take it over. I didn't make any money. I actually ended up having to pay some of the debt from that business because the guy that took it over ended up not actually being very good at running a business and was willing to let my credit suffer for it. So I ended up, I had to like disentangle myself from it, but that also allowed me to go do this. I had this one contract. I was working like 6 hours a week. I was living in Thailand. And like, when you live in Thailand, there's basically no, if you got a Western job, you kind of can't spend enough money to find yourself in dire straits. I think we were living in like this beautiful apartment. We were right in the cool part of town. We're eating out every meal. We were doing the tourist stuff, like feeding elephants and all this kind of stuff. We could not, like, no matter what we tried, we could not spend more than about $1,600 a month. And my contract was paying me 10, which was the most money I'd ever made. It was the first time I'd ever cracked six figures in my life. Um, so I was able to kind of leverage that situation to fix a lot of the problems in my life. I went from being in debt, but I was able to save money because of we were living in cheaper locations and I was working remotely. And so we saved money. I got myself out of debt. I ended up with money in savings for the first time in my entire life. This is also when I first met Marissa. She and I did, that's a story for another time, but basically we started our relationship by traveling together. And we were able to like completely change the quality of our lives. And what I noticed was as my stress levels dropped, my beard started to grow back. And so suddenly I have a full beard again and my stress levels are down. And this ended up, actually, the irony of this is that I came out the other side of it where I didn't have enough responsibility. Like, I made enough money off this tiny contract to live really well in all the places that we were living. And I was putting money away, and it all just kind of felt like too easy. And so I started to doubt like, what is the purpose of being alive if all I'm going to do is this until I die? And then Then I got into like the full existential spiral and all of my this is where I really learned a lot of the philosophy that I talk about on this show a lot is from this period of basically kind of hitting what I thought was the goal. Like to me, being in a position where I didn't work that much, I had enough money to be really comfortable, I was in a relationship that was really healthy, I was kind of doing the stuff that I'd always told myself that I wanted to do, like travel. And I did those things, but they were all like a lot of them were very quantitative things. Like I wanted to make six figures, so I had crossed six figures, and I kind of thought I would feel different when I crossed that number. And like things, I've talked about this before, so I won't go deep into it, but not having to look at the price of groceries was a significant change. Like not having to take a calculator to the grocery store truly is like it changes your life. Um, but beyond that, it didn't make me feel like a different person. I didn't feel more accomplished. I didn't feel happier. I didn't feel cooler. I didn't feel like I was better respected. I just kind of felt like I'd solved this class of problems that were caused by not having enough money. And that was amazing and truly like life changing. But then I was like, okay, but then, I was in my late 20s at this point. I'm like, so I got, if I play my cards right, I got, 60-ish years left. What do I do? Like this was my plan, was to hit this goal. So I need to have something to live for. And it's kind of that was the seed question that sent me on. At one point, Marissa was like, listen, you got to find something to do or I'm going to kill you myself, because I was just, in this very schmoopy kind of woe is me. It was like, I talk about nihilism sometimes, and how nihilism starts out really dark. Like, this is all meaningless and none of it matters, so why bother? That was the part of it that I was in, was this very like dark and depressing nihilism. And then I pushed through it to where I am today, which is that it's actually good news that nothing has any meaning, because the only meaning that is meaningful is what you assign to things, which is very freeing. But so yeah, one of those whole things. So anyways, I like kind of did this thing, but anyway, so I bring all of this up because of what I wanted to talk about today, which is this myth of stability. Because I have gone through in my life all of these very, what I think people talk about as, people think that I have a very risky life. And some of the things I've done are really risky. Like when I quit college to go join a band, that was risky. And I would say that was risky in a way that was foolish, right? Like I didn't have like a plan. I was just like, yeah, you know what? We're just going to figure it out. Like, we'll just see what happens. But I think the challenge that I was running into was that I've lost my train of thought here. Basically, I have done a lot of things that people think are risky, but most of the things I've done had a backup plan with them. Like I knew what I would do if they didn't work, and ultimately, they didn't feel wildly risky. And I think the point that's been driven home to me over and over and over again over the last few years is that stability is something that people seek because, you don't want to worry. Like I've had conversations with people where they say things like, yeah, but I just want to know that I've got a paycheck every 2 weeks and that I've got benefits and that I've got, the other things that come with a stable job. But the how many of those people now have come into my feed and saying like, hey, I was part of the recent layoffs and I'm looking for a new job. And so all that stability is just a lie, right? There's no situation where you're safe, right? And we have entered a stage of whatever you want to call it, like the current era of how businesses work. Is there like virtually no worker protections? You work a job and you do all the things that you should do. And if they decide to let you go, they might have to pay you a couple months of severance, 6 months if you're really lucky and the company is run by not shitbags, but like it doesn't guarantee you a job. You don't have a pension, you don't have any kind of like real stability, and we don't have a social safety net, so you don't have guaranteed benefits or any of the things that would make you feel stable, right? So the stability itself is not a thing that actually exists. And then I was thinking about it even more because I was talking about, what I'm doing and what people are talking about when they talk about stability is these sort of ideas of like, I want to know where my next paycheck is coming from. And it's like, okay, but we work at companies that can add a dime, at the drop of a dime, which we've seen multiple times over the last few years, decide that you are no longer necessary and they just cut you, right? You get laid off. So that's one way that things aren't as stable as they seem. But like the other way is somebody who's talking to me about my business, and I'm talking about how I've got invoices coming in, and like it's feast and famine when you work in invoice kind of services like I do. But at the same time, like I've learned how to charge, so I actually build in things like profit margins and enough to cover my overhead, the stuff that I wasn't doing in my original agency days. And as I was doing that, I also realized that, I was thinking about what happens if I have a slow month. And so I would put money in savings to make sure that I had something to cover a missed invoice or a slow month. And, the goal, which I'm not at, the goal is to have 6 months of operating capital, like sitting in the company bank account so that if something goes wrong, I can weather it long enough to either get to the other side where the invoice is coming again, or long enough to realize that after 3 months, I don't have any leads and it's time to start a job hunt and give me 3 months to do that. Um, I'm sitting right now closer to like 2 to 3 months of runway, which I'm not sad about, but it's not as comfortable as I want it to be. But like listen, when I am doing invoices stuff and I am working on a project and I know that when I finish that project, the invoice has to get sent, then it goes in, maybe it's net 30, maybe it's net 45, whatever the payment schedule is for the big companies. I know that invoice will get paid eventually. And I know that when that invoice comes in, I know how much I owe to people. I know how much I owe to myself for payroll and that kind of stuff. I know how much my benefits cost. And so I have a lot of predictability, right? Every month I know what I spend. And if I decide I don't want to spend that, I can spend less. I can, not buy right now I go get lunch pretty frequently with people, and that's like a business expense because it's usually, I'll go meet up with my crew, I'll meet up with somebody that I want to do a project with, those are all business expenses. And if I decide that things are lean, I can decide not to do that, right? I can cut the business expenses. Um, but ultimately, it's all pretty stable. And if I'm slow on an invoice, I've got the savings, and then when the invoice comes in, I replenish the savings, right? And as long as I'm responsible about that, which I've just automated it so that I don't have to have self-control, I am very stable. I've got benefits. I've got a regular paycheck. I use a system called Gusto, which a lot of companies use. Like some of you may be getting your paychecks through Gusto right now. And every month, Gusto withdraws the payroll amount, and they withdraw the payroll taxes and all the things that they withdraw, and they send that off to part of it to me and part of it to the government. And that is how I get paid. I get a regular paycheck every 2 weeks, just like everybody else. And I was thinking about this because like somebody was saying, well, but your job's not stable. Like there's risk in it because it's not stable. What if you don't get invoices? I was like, listen, my job is more stable than because like I have revenue. Like, Code TV makes money. And a lot of the startups that people are working at because they want stability, well, they'll look at me and say, like, how do you take on that instability? I'm like, what do you mean? My company is bootstrapped. I don't owe anybody any money. I have revenue. I have savings. Your company is paying you out of revenue they don't have. So they're dipping into their savings every month. And there is a literal fuse on how many months you've got until your venture capital runs out of money, at which point you have to go ask somebody else to give you more money so that the company can continue to operate off of savings, right? That's inherently unstable. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's interesting to me what we convince ourselves counts as stability. Like owning your own thing, unstable. Working for a company that has no revenue and a shitload of debt and people who can pull the plug at any time, stable? Like, I think there's a difference between I have to think about what I'm doing and I don't, right? Like if I take a job, somebody else is running payroll, somebody else is managing benefits. They just send me a list and I pick the one that I want. Somebody else is making sure that there's savings, presumably. There's all this stuff that we get to delegate, and that is fine, but it's not stability, right? It's delegation. It's letting somebody else handle the stuff that you don't want to handle. Owning it yourself is just as, unstable or stable as any other business. It just means you see the things, and being aware of what's happening does not increase the instability, right? If if you I've been in leadership meetings. I've talked to C-levels. I've had dinners with founders where they kind of pour their hearts out about what's happening behind the scenes. All of these companies are absolute madness behind the scenes because none of them are making enough money. All of them have burn rates that are alarming. And for anybody who's venture funded, you are basically told spend money way beyond what you earn, because that's the point, is to scale, right? But that also means that your burn rate, you take a $10 million round and your burn rate is $1.2 million a year, you have at best, what, 7 years, 6 years before you run out of money. And the appearance of stability is that if you get a job at that company, you don't hear those conversations. You don't hear how fast the money is running out. You don't hear how much money is left in savings. You don't hear how the revenue is not pacing properly to hit whatever goal. And sometimes you do. And I love it when a company's transparent like that. But like, let's not mistake it for stability. It's that you aren't seeing the chaos. That's all. I think it's it just is what it is, right? So yeah, web contractor for an agency, zero benefits, don't have kids or wife, only 26 years old. I mean, honestly, being 26, no kids, no family is the best chance you have to do the risky stuff, because like I didn't have kids when I went and did my time abroad. And that meant that I could do something like give up the lease on my apartment, sell everything I owned, and like live out of a suitcase for 2 years, because there wasn't any, like, I didn't own a house. I didn't have any big, I had a credit card debt, but I didn't have anything else, right? I basically had to like make sure that I could make enough money to pay my credit cards, to pay for the ticket to the next place, and to pay for the Airbnb, and keep myself fed. And so I'd kind of worked out that schedule. But like I knew that my contracts would pay me enough that if I went somewhere like Thailand, I would be able to save money after paying all those bills. And that allowed me to pay down the credit cards way faster, which allowed me to put money into savings. And ultimately, 2 years of living like that put me in a situation where I had enough money in savings that I was able to put a down payment on a house, right? So that really made a huge difference for me. And I couldn't do that today. Like now I have a mortgage. Now I have a business that is very like, it's not co-located, but like I gotta be in cities to make this stuff work. Like I have to be in Las Vegas next week for reInvent because I'm meeting a bunch of people that I hope decide to work with me, right? I have to be in San Francisco all the time. I have to be in New York a couple times a year. Like I couldn't go live in Thailand now. My meeting schedule alone would mean that I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning taking meetings most days of the week. And so now, right, that isn't an option to me. When I was younger, absolutely an option, right? And the contracts that I took maybe had me on 1 or 2 meetings a week. So I didn't mind the occasional 11 to 1 a.m. meeting if that meant that I could go do this thing that I wanted to do. Like, and I don't know. I think the other thing, I remember having this conversation with Sarah Drasner where we were talking about work-life balance and we were talking about burnout. And I don't know, she and I are both people who have worked way more hours than like the work-life balance hardcore hardliners would say is reasonable, and I don't know where I stand on this, because there's a lot of research that shows that working beyond 40 hours a week is a pretty surefire way to lower the quality of your work. To, if you work, I think it's like a sustained pace of 60 hours a week. After just a few weeks, you actually go negative in terms of productivity because you're overtired. You start making mistakes, and it takes you longer to fix those mistakes than if you had just not worked the extra hours, right? So there's some really good information about that. And I have also done a lot of stuff on the side, taken a lot of side projects, goofed around with a lot of different things. And that has been stuff that I did beyond my normal 40-hour week. And it gave me energy. It like made me feel better and it helped me progress. And I did that because I didn't have the kids. I didn't have a steady relationship. I was able to just sort of like put my head down and do this thing because it was the thing I wanted to focus on. I talk about it like what you're optimizing for. And I think when you're young and you're single, you can optimize for advancement and know that that trade-off comes at the expense of relationships, kids, etc., and recognize that that should not be a long-term optimization. Like I did that for a few years to help me cross into being able to do the types of projects that landed me at IBM. But when I got to IBM, I hard flipped that. When I was at IBM, I would show up like it was a 9 to 5 job. I probably showed up 9:15, left 4:45. Like left the computer at the office. Did not care about that job, and they were into that. Like I did great work when I was there, and when I was off, our team was so stable. They didn't even we technically had on call, but like nobody was ever on call, right? And so that meant that we basically like I was able to exist in a roughly like 39-hour week. I didn't do anything in my other time. Like I started up a D&D group with some like one of my friends was a GM, and so I joined D&D. We joined a CrossFit gym. Like we explored all these restaurants. I wasn't doing shit. I didn't have side projects. I wasn't writing. I wasn't really doing anything at all. I worked when I worked, and I hardcore optimized for like being a person outside of that. I built my social network. That was what I was working on, was community. And then later, now I would say I'm more optimized toward growth again, but I'm doing it in a way that I'm not willing to make trade-offs that I was willing to make when I was in my early 20s. And I think that this is a continuous process. Like your life is not a puzzle that gets solved and then framed and put on the wall. Your life is more of it's like surfing. Like the ocean is always different, and every wave will be different than the one that came before it. Despite the fact that you can get really, really good at surfing, you still never surf the same wave twice, right? So no matter how good you get at doing this stuff, no matter how clear you are on your path forward, every single scenario is going to require different tweaks and adjustments. And your just the simple fact of time is going to change the way that you interact with the world. Like my optimizations when I was in my 20s are way different than my optimizations are now that I'm 40. Not because not even necessarily because of lifestyle circumstances. Like if I became single, through what I'd assume I would have done something stupid if I became single. But like if I became single and I didn't have a house anymore and I was in a situation where I could go live on the road again, like I did in my mid 20s, I wouldn't do it. Not because I, don't think that it was fun or useful or anything like that, but because my optimizations now are way different. I care way more about local community than I ever did when I was in my early 20s. And I care way less about the partying and even like, I don't know. I also think like there were things that I was really excited about when I was a kid. Like I used to care a lot about going out, hooking up, stuff like that. And like before Marissa and I met, it wasn't the same. I didn't want to like hook up anymore. It was not really what I was focused on. I wanted to make friends, and like if the friends were people that could be romantic, then cool, let it be that. But like the friendship was the point. And a lot of the people that I quote unquote dated ended up being really good friends because we just didn't really have like any romantic compatibility. But I was optimizing for meeting people that I would like, not people that I could hook up with. Really interesting optimization change because, early 20s me was like zero optimization for friendship, 100% optimization for hookup because that was what I was focused on. So, and that's kind of, that's an odd example, but basically what I'm saying is that, the things that are important to me have shifted over time, partially due to work, partially due to circumstances. I think the things that I cared a lot about when I was in my early 20s were often driven by stuff that I didn't have or hadn't experienced yet. I had a lot of questions. What if I tried this? What if I did this? What if I never experienced this? I was very, very lucky to be able to build myself a life where I got to answer a lot of those questions. I know what it's like to live out of a suitcase in Asia. I know what it's like to sell all my stuff and like be a full blown minimalist. Like my limit is what I can carry onto a plane. And there's stuff I loved about that, and there's stuff that I didn't like about that. And now I'm able to make different decisions because I'm not wondering what if anymore. I don't look at like my life and say, what if I tried that, right? Like I've talked about this before, but my core life philosophy is do the best you can to die without regret. You should be on your deathbed looking back going like, yeah, yeah, I did it all. Right? Like no regrets, nothing that I'm going, wish I would have given that a shot, right? And all of this comes back to this idea of stability because I think I got told, and this probably was more true because, for example, Marissa's mom she worked at a credit union, and she worked at that credit union for her entire career. It was I don't know if it was her first job, but it was one of her early jobs. And she rose slowly through the ranks, got promotions, ended up being a VP, built up a pension, was able to retire, and still collects a pension from this credit union. And I believe she was one of the last groups that was able to actually collect on that pension. I don't know when they ended, but they ended that program at some point. So she's got a pension, right? When do we get that option anymore? Like, I think the only way to get a pension these days is to go into the military. And even then, I don't know if it's guaranteed because I don't know anything about the military, but I feel like somebody was telling me that that's the case now is like, you don't always get a pension. You have to like meet criteria. Um, so where's the stability, right? You can't go get a job and work your way through the ranks and put in your dues and then like have a good retirement anymore. That's not true. It doesn't exist. Not today. So we have to treat stability as a thing that we make day by day and not a thing that can be found. It's not a thing that you can opt into, right? The only way to be truly stable, I guess, would be to marry rich in a way that no matter what happens, you end up keeping that enough money to not have to work. And I haven't figured out how that one works. So the other option is to try to build something that I can make as stable as I can. And I do that through, like I said, I try to set money aside to build up the savings so that if something does go wrong, I can draw off that savings to keep the stable income coming. But like, I don't know. I feel like you can get a private pension. You have that in Europe, man. Maybe I should just move to Europe. Do you feel like that's one of those things that the priority shift that happens when you get older? Yeah, I care about the corporate ladder, and now more about maximizing time with people that matter and making memories. I feel the same way. I think that's really where I'm living is that I think when I was growing, when I was younger, I would have felt resentment toward the people around me if I would have like not put in the time to pursue the things that were important to me. Like I think, and I've met people who feel this way where when you hear them talk, if they talk about their youth, they have this sort of like bitterness about what they could have done if they just would have had more time or what they might have done if they would have been, and it's never like done with actual rage, but I know, like I know for sure that having kids was not what my parents planned, and I know for sure that they not maliciously, but have some like, I wonder what we could have done if that hadn't happened because they decided to have the kids, which I'm grateful for. That's why I'm here. But at the same time, like I was a severe complication in a plan that they didn't have. Like I wasn't part of it. And for them to shift their whole life around required them to make some trade-offs that I didn't have to make. Right. Like they made do with the situation they had. And I was fortunate in that I could completely alter my situation and nobody was depending on me. So if I decided to burn it all down and try something new, I was the only one at risk. I wasn't putting a kid at risk. I wasn't putting a spouse at risk. It was just me blowing my life up, and my mom would go, "Oh my God, you're doing this again." And it was fine because I'd bounce, right? I only had to cover myself. And like I could sleep on a friend's couch and that was okay. I didn't have to figure out where to put a baby or how to do any of that stuff. But these days, right? I feel like I've done those selfish things where I chased everything that I wanted. And now I think a lot more about like, okay, but who am I going to do it with? Like I've been able to build this life. I've been able to take these chances and I've had these experiences, but at the same time, like I don't want to be alone. And I certainly don't want to just like keep optimizing for more because I think that's what went wrong with people like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk is they just kept going for more. Well, not Elon Musk, he's a nepo baby, but like I feel like Mark Zuckerberg is a good example of somebody who he got a lot when he was young. And instead of saying, how do I share this with people? He said, how do I get more? And now he's so alienated from everybody around him that I don't think he even understands what human relationships are. And I don't know that it's even possible anymore, because how can you interact with Mark Zuckerberg in a way that isn't filtered through how much money and power he has? I don't actually know if you could be in a room with him and just see Mark. I think you have to see the billionaire, right? Especially in the context of the world today and the choices that are being made. So you end up at this situation where, like, he has effectively built himself a tiny little prison out of money, where everybody who interacts with him is thinking about his money. He can't build deep, meaningful relationships, because I don't think that the people who could see him as just Mark are any better. Like, there's a reason that the billionaire group chat is so unhinged. It's because they only talk to themselves and they're untethered from realities. The same as the VC group chat and so on and so forth. They optimized for more, lost touch with people who could ground them, and in cases like, I think, Elon Musk, actively pushed away anybody who disagreed with them, until they end up in this super weird little echo chamber where the only people left in their lives are people that say yes to whatever they want. And that, I saw this really depressing quote. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't want to look it up. The quote was something to the effect of, I think in the future, we won't have platforms anymore. We'll have an app. And the app is going to show you the pixels and make the sounds that it believes you want to see and hear. So basically, like, this was Elon Musk recently on an interview where he's basically saying that he believes that what happens in the future is that the technology will algorithmically predict exactly what we want to experience, and we will not participate in that anymore. It'll just show us what we want. We'll get the dopamine and we move on. And to me, that is such a, I think that might be the most depressing outcome that I could imagine, because it completely strips the entire experience of its humanity. Like, the act of being in the world is interaction and participation. And if the only experience you have is that literally everything around you tries to guess and accommodate what you want, like, I think that is what his life is like, right? Because he's got enough money and he's got enough people around him that don't, like, they're basically paid at this point to not question him. They're paid to prop up whatever he believes. And anybody who doesn't do that gets pushed out of the group. We've seen that happen. So if you exist in that world, like, I don't know if you've had the experience of being actively flattered because somebody wants something from you, but it feels gross. Like, it starts out being like, oh, look, this person is, like, into my stuff. And then you realize very quickly that they're not into your stuff. They don't believe the things that you believe. They're just saying what they think you want to hear out of some motivation, whether it's fear for their job, whether it is a hope that they get access to the power and wealth that you have, whether it's, they want stability, and so they're trying to give themselves stability by, trading their integrity to you. Whatever it is, right? Like, they want to be part of your entourage, and so they do whatever you want to stay around, and it doesn't feel good. It feels empty. What makes praise feel good is the knowledge that you earned it. I made a thing, and not everybody likes it, but the people who like it a lot, right? If everything I ever made, like, I draw a little sketch on a piece of paper and everybody frames it and goes and puts it up in the Louvre and says, "Wow, you're so incredible." I know that it's a lie. Like, I know and now I don't know if I've actually done something good, even when I think I've done something good. It's this idea of, if everything gets praised, how do you know when something is actually, because you do some stinkers. We all do crap. Like, every one of us has made something terrible. And sometimes you just need a friend who loves you enough to say, that's not it. You shouldn't do that. Right. And if you don't have that, if you don't have anybody pushing back on you and saying, this is not something that is worth your time or effort, and this is not your best effort, and maybe you're off track here, then when you get the praise, you have no contrast for it. And you also have no way to believe in the integrity of your achievements because no one will give you a factual assessment. They will only give you what they think you want to hear. That's this future that's being predicted is a future where you open up a device and it only tells you what you want to hear. How miserable and empty will that existence be? Because the only thing you ever get is somebody lying to you to try to make you feel good. And in this case, it would be lying to you to make you feel good because what they want, because there's always a what I want and why somebody would do this, is they want you to spend more time engaged with their app that presumably will, sell you things. That that is dark. Like so dark. I think I don't know. I hope that there is a path out of this sort of algorithmic spiral where everybody just believes that everything we do should be predicted to make us maximum happy because I don't think people understand um, how much failure is necessary as a contrast to success. Like finding a good book because you've read some bad ones so that the good book stands out that much more is so powerful. Like watching bad social media videos so that the really good ones like melt your brain or make you laugh super hard or whatever it is like that, even though that's not a lot of effort, like it's being a curator is a sense of accomplishment. If you can find the best memes or find the best videos, that's a sense of effort, and being able to then share those and curate them is a sense of accomplishment. And if your friends enjoy that and you send them good memes, that's still a thing. You put some effort into it and they validate that by laughing at the things that you sent them, right? Is it a lot of effort? No. But if they take that away from us and instead what we're doing is we're basically watching a completely personalized slop feed that is designed specifically for you to make you feel good. It doesn't allow you anymore to like curate and send something to a friend and do stuff like that. Like it kind of becomes like somebody dangling keys in front of you, hoping that you stay distracted enough to let them empty your pockets. It's really depressing. I don't know. I think so. So going back to the original point, what Isra was talking about with like maximizing time with people and making memories. I think for me, what I think about a lot these days is how do we make sure that we're making efforts that people can appreciate? And I don't think it needs to be professional effort. Like a really good example is I have historically done this thing that we've jokingly called the steadily escalating dinner party. And a couple very good friends of ours will come over, we'll set a menu and we choose like somebody's going to do the main, somebody's going to do the side, somebody's going to do the dessert. And we just go way overboard, like so much harder than we ever needed to go to try to make something that like blows everybody else's mind. Because why not, right? It's really, really fun to just be super extra and like watch these crazy tutorials about how to make there's this roast they call Thor's hammer, and you stand it up on the plate and it's like the whole femur and then these roasts kind of attach. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And we are 100% going to make it for our friends so that we can present that, right? We had one of our friends decided they were going to make cow soy, which is this super complicated Thai dish. And when I say super complicated, it's not the dish itself. It's that each portion of that dish is a sub recipe. You know, when you go into a cookbook and they're like, 3 ingredients, but each of the 3 ingredients is a sub recipe, and several of those sub recipes contain like sub recipes. And so it's not actually just 3 ingredients. It's like 500 ingredients that kind of get like pre-condensed into your custom made roasted chili powder or your curry or whatever it is, that then becomes like, just add some curry, add your chili powder. And you're like, wow, 3 ingredients, right? But a friend of ours decided they were going to do this. They made every single component of cow soy from scratch. It took them days. To this day, outside of Thailand, the best cow soy I've ever had. Just, and like, what a cool thing to do. To just go so hard for no reason other than trying to get your friends to go, whoa, great job on this. right? And the reason that we love to do this is because our friends are honest enough that if we fuck it up, they go, "Ah, all right, well, we know what to not to do next time." And it's all very loving, but, like, everybody's really honest, and there's this huge sense of accomplishment when you make something that 6 months later, somebody goes, "Man, you remember when you made that thing? We should do that again." That to me is the experience that's worth living for, and that's the value of being alive in the first place, is to try to find these places where your effort is worth making and it's rewarded by genuine, like genuine assessment and hopefully genuine positive reactions, right? But that's what the effort is about. You got to be willing to do enough work to get the positive reaction. Otherwise, it's unearned and it doesn't feel good. Like if everybody around you just says good job all the time, you don't believe it, right? Or if you do believe it, you become super weird and delusional, right? I love that most of the things I've tried to cook didn't work on the first try, and that I had to try them a second time because then I was like, "Ah, I know what I did wrong. I'm gonna try this again." And the second time you go, "Ah, that was it. Now it's good." Or maybe if it's really hard, the 3rd or 4th or 5th time you try it, right? But that feeling is incredible, and you can't get that feeling without the failure. So, building a world that eliminates failure algorithmically is not a world that I wanna live in. It's not a I don't to my opinion, it's a bad world. So, anyways, just being grumpy over here. Um, when you're going through these tough times, do you ever get anxiety and panic attacks? Yes, and, like, I would say that I spent most of my time in, like, low level anxiety. I also okay, this is not medical advice, so don't do this. I ate a lot of mushrooms when I was in high school, and I believe pretty deeply that that experience was very important to the level of, what I would say even keelness is that I have today. And I remember distinctly there was this sort of experience that I had where I remember just feeling, like, overwhelmed by everything all the time, and I felt like like, the world was happening too fast, and the people around me were expecting too much, and I was working on all of these things, and none of them were getting where they wanted to be, and I just couldn't figure out how to succeed. It was all so bad. And then one of my, irresponsible teenage nights, we ate a bunch of mushrooms, and we went for a walk in the woods, and I remember having this sort of like moment of clarity where I've described it as like when you're in a maze, right? If you've ever done a corn maze or any kind of physical maze, all you can see is the hallway that you're in and like your next 1 to 3 turns. You you can only see those choices, and it's difficult to know what happens afterward, and you don't know if you're making the right choice, right? Because if you go around that corner, it might be a dead end. And so you feel this deep sense of fear that you can't make mistakes, that things could go wrong, and like what if I make a wrong choice? But if you go above the maze and you look down on it, you have way more ability to look at it and say, okay, that's a dead end, but then we can come back out here and we can go this way. And then, well, no, that's a dead end too. So then I can go this way. And eventually you'll get to the center of the maze or out of the maze, depending on how you want to look, what kind of maze you're playing. And I felt this sense of like I had been living in the maze. And so everything was this very high stakes next choice. Every choice that I made could be fatal. Get it wrong, maybe the maze has a spike pit in it or something, and I fall into it and I'm dead. And this particular experience felt like it lifted me above the maze, and the perspective that it gave me was, so what? If I get it wrong, I'm just gonna take a couple steps back and try a different door. Who cares? Right? Like, well, we know there's a way out. You just gotta keep trying doors, and it's not like this isn't the Minotaur's maze. There's nobody down here trying to kill me. It's just me trying to make my way through. And that feeling, and it's so difficult to explain because I think it's the sort of thing there's this quote, I forget the author, it might have been Michael Pollan, um, where they say, you know, you can do years of meditation or therapy to reach these states of enlightenment where you get these critical insights into your life, or you can eat a shit load of hallucinogens and basically get it immediately. Um, I feel like that was one of those moments for me where it just sort of like changed the way that I thought about everything, and it was not in a vacuum. I was reading a lot of philosophy at the time. I was reading a bunch of books about, you know, personal change management and a lot of the business books and whatever was available at the time. You know, this was 25 years ago, something like that. But I remember there was like a before and after that for me, where I really do feel like what I believed up to be true just kind of popped into place. And I know I've had these experiences with and without assistance. Um, and I feel like they're just these moments where you're ready to hear a piece of advice that you've heard a million times. And for whatever reason, that day you had the right set of circumstances, you'd eaten the right thing for breakfast, you were in the right mood, and it just gets into your brain. For some reason, something happens that's different that day that allows you to actually internalize that advice. I truly cannot explain what it is that makes it happen, and I wish there was an easier way to explain it, but I think it's you just get these moments where things are different, and I've had that, you know, in my teenage years around my anxiety and stuff. It was due to this experimentation with hallucinogens, but then, like, as an adult, you know, I've, like, in the last year, for example, I've lost 30 pounds. I've gained a lot of strength. I've been able to, you know, my numbers in the gym have gone way up. And prior to that, I'd had this just an absolute hell of a time staying consistent with fitness for any amount. And like there was just a day, and this was, you know, this is not like a eureka moment, but it was like for whatever reason, this particular day, the right set of things happened that caused it to like sink into me that I could make fitness into a thing I enjoyed, and that would make it easier for me to keep doing, which is literally advice that I give everybody, which is find a way to enjoy the journey, because the process is what you're going to do and the rewards are just kind of a bonus, right? If you're only working for the rewards, you're not going to be able to stick to it. It's just like very few of us have the ability to stick to something terrible long term in hopes of a big reward. So if you do something that you enjoy, you'll eventually get the rewards, but you don't care because what you're enjoying is the process. For some reason, last year around this time, I was sitting down. I saw content from what's his name, Seth. I always forget his name, but he was the guy who played Willem in Mallrats, the guy who it's not a schooner, it's a sailboat, you know, that guy. He's lost a ton of weight. Ethan Suplee is his name. He lost a ton of weight. He looks amazing now. At the same time, I got wind of this powerlifting gym. I remembered this, you know, this old group of friends that I had when I was in college that were all powerlifters, and I used to train with them. And that, I remember that being really fun. It's like all this stuff happened at the same time, and it was the right day. I was in the right mood. Something crystallized in my brain, and I just changed. Can't explain it. Don't know why it worked. Don't know if it would have worked the next day if I'd looked at the exact same stuff. But for whatever reason, that day it worked. And for the last year, I've just been able to treat fitness like a thing I enjoy doing, and I'm having fun with it, and I'm showing up, and I'm getting the results. And like the results are great, but what I really like is that I just kind of look forward to going to the gym in the morning, and that's never been true prior to now. So I don't know. So to answer your question, I don't get panic attacks or anxiety attacks, but I do definitely have moments where you know, I spend a lot of time feeling very overwhelmed by things, but not in a way that makes me feel like I can't take a step forward. I think that's maybe the thing is just trying to push forward a little bit. Um, Wally was a reality show. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dystopian Surrender. It's just like super bumming. Um, it's already happening. Yeah, I think this is one of those things that we're gonna have to reckon with. And I think I feel like the world of the future, I think we'll look back kind of shocked at the way that we consume media right now. Because I think we know, like we all know, like even the people who are extremely online are joking about how unhealthy it is for them to be extremely online. So I think we all know, and I think that we'll look back on it in the way that same way that we look at smoking, where it's like, man, it's kind of nuts that we just used to do that, and like everybody was okay with it, and it happened everywhere, and we were like, it was unregulated and like nobody thought about it at all, right? Like it was totally fine for Russia to stand up thousands upon thousands of accounts to just algorithmically feed anger into Twitter, and for like the US to do the same, and for somebody with an AI bot to just see what happens if I experiment on my LinkedIn crowd by like doing rage bots in the comments and just see what maybe people will engage more, right? Like it's kind of nuts that we just do that, and everybody's like, well, yeah, that's how it works. Like, and we're just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop using it, but yeah, I know. I just try to notice when it's a bot. It's like, oh my god, we are broken. Like we're um and yeah, not knowing what's real and what's fake. Like we're in such a weird spot too, where the stuff like Nano Banana is out and it's good enough that in a lot of cases you kind of can't tell if the thing is real or not. Um, and I think it's like very dark to imagine that that's a thing people are excited about. Um, but yeah, AI driven content defers control to the controller of the AI. That is also a very terrifying thing, especially when, like, there's a very obvious and extreme example of this, which is everything that's happening with Grok on Twitter, right? There's always a funny example, but it's like funny, oh my god, not funny, haha. Like the most recent thing where Grok claimed that like Elon was more physically fit than LeBron James. Like just like it would be comical if it wasn't so goddamn sad that somebody listened to Elon say, "Hey, can you make it say that?" And they were like, "Yes, sir. Of course, sir." Right? Again, because what a hollow existence it must be to only be surrounded by people who won't call you on your stuff and just let you do these completely humiliating things. And then of course everybody around him will go, "Oh yeah, you really owned them, sir." Like, just deep, 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 deep. But yeah, I think, and this is a really good point. The fact that you can fail and be okay is, I think, a fundamentally important part of growing up, right? I think it's sort of the emotional equivalent of object permanence in a certain way. Like failure is very scary in the same way that before you have object permanence, when your parents cover their faces, you're like, oh my God, they're gone forever, right? The world is, I am alone in the world. And then they move their hands and you see their face, you go, oh my God, they're back again, right? Peekaboo. But failure is a similarly terrifying thing where we believe before we've ever done it that failure will be the end of us. I remember being in high school thinking about giving a presentation in front of the class or asking someone out on a date. And my expectation for what would happen if I did something wrong, I don't know. I guess I felt like maybe there's like they had an ejector seat that would fire me directly into the sun, and that would be it for me if I made a mistake. Like, I'd get turned down for a date, and they would just immediately like punt me, and I would go into the recycle bin, and they would just leave me out with the trash, right? But of course, that's not what happens. You make a fool of yourself. Your friends make fun of you because you stumbled on your words, or because you tried to be smooth with a girl and you said something really stupid, and everybody teases you about it. And like, but it's fine. You just move on with your life, because we all make those big mistakes, and you start to realize that mistakes aren't the end, and really making mistakes is how you learn things so that you can do them better in the future. And so we hopefully learn that as kids, that like, you try to solve the puzzle and you don't get it right, and instead of somebody just solving it for you and telling you that you're perfect, they just say like, hey, why don't you try it again? What do you think would work next time? And then you learn, oh wow, okay, so I did that first time, it didn't make sense, but now I know more, so I try it again, and now I can do it better, and I got it done, and I'm a genius, right? And then you just kind of keep doing that over and over and over again. You start with, maybe you're able to put the right blocks in the right holes in the little block box, and you end up being able to read, and you end up being able to do math, and then you end up thinking about how you can apply those concepts to other things, and maybe you learn how to run a business, or maybe you learn how to do a skill. Then you learn you can trade that skill for money, and then you learn that if you're good with money, you can use it to buy things like clothes and houses and cars, and like all this stuff starts to happen, right? And each one of those things is a thing that you kind of failed your way toward, but you ultimately got good at it because you kept doing it, right? And so then we start looking at these other things that we haven't tried yet, and we think, well, I could never. I'd be so embarrassed if I failed. What if I tried to dance and I can't? I'd be so embarrassed. What if I tried to sing and I can't? I'd be so embarrassed. Who cares? Be embarrassed, like be cringe. Doesn't matter. Um, because once you do it a few times, you'll get good at it, or you'll have a whole lot of fun being bad at it. Like nothing is better than karaoke because you can like the people who are the best at karaoke are the people who love it the most. They are oftentimes not the best singers, but they are having the most fun. And I never get sick of watching somebody just screech their way through an incredible performance of I believe in a thing called love. Who cares? Like be bad at it. It's supposed to be fun. What I'm here for is your kicks and your air guitar. Right? But I mean that's like it really is being able to embrace this idea of iterative failure and improvement is what makes us human. It's what makes us it's that's the magic of life, right? Is this process of like, well, if I try it once, it's fine. If I try it twice, it's better. If I try it 1,000 times, I can do it. I can do amazing things. Like I don't know. And they're so silly. But being silly is like I don't this is why I focus so much on fun with the Code TV stuff. Is I really feel like play gives us permission to be wrong, right? Because if we're just goofing around, then who cares if I screw it up? There's no stakes. There's no stakes if I screw up in a game of checkers, right? We're just messing around. Who cares? But you learn a lot when you screw up in that game. And like if you build an app and you're trying to make somebody laugh, I don't know, it doesn't feel you don't feel the urge to get it like architecturally perfect and like have everything exactly right. You're just kind of trying to make somebody giggle. And the fact that the app's kind of shitty sometimes is part of the fun. Um, there's a lot of joy in that sort of thing. And you also learn, you get in practice, you're making a thing. And so I feel like I don't know. Yeah, a lot of this like push to get away from ever experiencing difficulty or discomfort or failure. It just kind of feels like somebody saying like, what would it be like to not be human? Like, what if you were just like one big dopamine receptor and we just dripped a little dopamine on you a few times a day? But like, what's the end game? What is it? What happens? Right? Are we just kind of going to hang out in a little VR pod and that's it? I don't know. It just doesn't sound fun to me. It's not how I want to live. Um, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Ooh, I like that. I like that. And I agree. It is more about the student than the teacher. Um, no reason to assume other AI providers aren't doing the same thing more competently. I would absolutely agree. Like the stuff that we're seeing in Grok is just that's somebody not competent doing a thing with nobody around them to push back. The biases are there. We know the biases are there because they were there in the data before they got fed into the machine. And then that's before they tweaked the weights of everything. Like we know. Um, just really is a big bummer. Um, moved away from friends. Now life is depressing. Thought securing the future will bring happiness even after the internship offer, not feeling happy. How do you find happiness? Okay. So we talked about this a little bit. And this is kind of what I'm saying. So you were optimizing for building out that kind of that financial success, like career, future, et cetera, et cetera. But now that you hit that goal, it's time to optimize on something else. Like when I was trying to figure out my goal was I wanted to make, I was like, I'm going to make 6 figures. That was the goal. I wanted to make 6 figures. And then I was just shy of 30. I crossed that line. And then I had to think of something else. Like what could I do instead? Or now that I've done this, what should I focus on? Because I didn't want to focus on, well, now that I've hit 100, maybe I can hit 200, right? It's not just a number go up scenario. It's what brings value. The difference between making 30 grand a year and 100 grand a year is quite literally life changing. The difference between 100 grand and 200 grand is like, now I can buy nicer shoes, right? It makes a difference, but it doesn't make the kind of difference that like blows your mind, right? So Sure, I want to grow, but that's not really the focus anymore. Like I'm not focusing on growth at the expense of all else. And instead, what would make me happy? And for me, the answer was focus on community, focus on growing relationships and find a way to share the success with people that not like find somebody to caretake. Like I'm not out to do charity. I'm out to find people that are doing the work and like, can I nudge a door open? Can I make an intro? Can I if you're almost there, you just need a little bit of a resource. Can I like be that resource to get you just a tiny bit further and help you hit that next level? And that was where I started to optimize was on like the network side of things and not network in like a please join my professional network, but network in the sense of like, who are the people in my life that do stuff that makes me excited to do more stuff? Like I want to be completely surrounded by people that I find super impressive. And my circle of friends now, like the people that I text on a given day are the sort of people that just blow my mind. Like I was listening in on a call, like my friend Shirley Wu does data visualization and is now living out in Tokyo doing art and like uses the data visualization stuff to inform the art, collaborates with these other artists to do these really cool like visualizations of how things are changing over time or how people experience the world. Really, really impressive, incredible stuff that I find super inspiring. And now I'm not necessarily going to go do art, but I love that she does because she gives me ideas for ways that I could incorporate some of the way she does art into some of the way that I work on projects in the future. I talk to Sarah Drasner all the time because we became friends when we worked at Netlify. And like the way that Sarah approaches everything is just so unique and different. And she's so driven to do a good job. And like you would think that somebody who's risen to the level that she's risen to would just sort of sit back and say, okay, I think I'm okay. And absolutely not. Sarah is out there trying to figure out how to go a little bit, do it better, accomplish the next thing. What's the next opportunity to do something even more fun and exciting? And there's like nothing more inspiring than that. And I'm, my group chats are just full of people like that who do incredible stuff. They're pushing the envelope. Some of them do it for money, some of them do it for love, some of them are musicians or artists, they're builders, they're business people, they're just doing really cool stuff with their family. They got home projects that they do. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters to me is that this is somebody who is constantly pushing themselves forward. And I just made it my job to become friends with as many people like that as I could. And the way that you do that is by being a good friend, right? So my optimization was how can I be the kind of person that people want to be friends with? And that was a very different thing from what I was doing before, because before I was saying, how can I be the type of person that people want to pay money to? And I was optimizing for bigger contracts. I was optimizing for looking like a professional. I was optimizing for getting into rooms with people who had access. And I wasn't really thinking about, as much. I mean, I've always liked making friends, but you get kind of utilitarian when you're trying to grow your career. And so people are a tool that helps you get to the next goal. And when I shifted that to like the people being the goal, I became the thing that needed to change. I needed to learn how to be a better listener, how to empathize with somebody, how to remember that my experience isn't the only experience, and that when somebody talks, their experience is true, even if I've never had it, right? And to not challenge somebody on stuff like that. These are like little things that I learned over time that allowed me to be somebody that people don't feel exhausted talking to. They like talking to me, some of them. And those people became great friends. And now I get to, sometimes we cross up at conferences, sometimes they come stay at my place, sometimes I go stay at their place, but we've just got this network where we live around the world and we're just friends. We hang out, we do stuff together, we tell each other stories about what we're working on. We all get really excited about what everybody else is doing. And I think all of us are better because we're surrounded by people who think that way. And so, that was for me what the next optimization was to try to build this community that made me feel excited every day. Because if I'm not doing something cool, one of my friends is, and that's going to give me the juice to want to do something cool. Right. So that was my optimization. So for you, what is your next optimization? Is it, building a local community again? Is it like what makes you feel depressed? Do you feel lonely? Do you not enjoy your work? What are the things going on? And what can you change? What do you have control over that doesn't require you to upend everything, but rather how can you sort of nudge the process so that you keep the things that you've gained, but you're not necessarily optimizing for the same things anymore. You now have the ability to optimize for things that make you happy, um, and try to do it in a way that doesn't cost you the things that you gained when you were optimizing for success, right? I think there's a hopefully it's not that the work you do makes you miserable, because that's a tough one, because it does put you in a spot where you've got to give things up to get the things you want. But if the work is fine, then there's probably a good opportunity to just shift what you're focused on, like where you put your energy, and that will give you the ability to keep the things that you've built. You're not necessarily going to grow them anymore, and that's okay. Give yourself permission to let it just be, and then focus on what's important and grow the thing that you don't have. Um, just scanning the comments here. We got a bunch of them in here. Learning to be okay feeling your feelings and letting them pass through is a whole skill. Yes. That too is a whole, I mean, it's very, very difficult to not just like get caught in it. But again, it's kind of like being in the maze versus seeing the maze from above. It's the feelings are there in response to something. So if sometimes you just got to like sit with it and just be mad for a minute, or be sad, or whatever it is, but then think about what it is that made you feel that way. Like, was it a violated expectation? You thought somebody was going to do a thing, but they didn't do that thing. And then why did they not do that thing? Is it because you never told them? Like, this is a core problem I see in a lot of our friends' relationships, is like they'll fight. And then it's like, well, why did you fight? And they're like, well, he didn't do this thing that I wanted him to do. And it's like, okay, but did you tell him that you wanted him to do that thing? And it's like, well, no, I just wanted him to know. And it's like, well, okay, well then you're kind of setting both of you are set up to fail if that's the case. Like, the communication is really important. Set good expectations. Then you can avoid that feeling next time, right? And like, I don't know, like it's being able to both feel your feelings. Now, it's not shameful to feel feelings or bad to feel feelings, but then observe, like, in addition to feeling the feeling, what was it that caused that feeling? Or what really is there? And sometimes, if a loved one passes away, you just got to feel that feeling and you just process the grief. There's nothing to fix. A lot of times though, there's something to fix. Like, if you're fighting with your partner, why? There's probably a reason, and it's probably half your fault, because that's generally how these things go, right? And if it's not, and if it's all their fault, then maybe you got to start making your list of, is this actually somebody I want to be with, or am I here because I feel like I've put in the time and I'm supposed to, right? All of these are very difficult things that are very hard to get right. Um, but if you're observing them and you're thinking about them and you're adjusting based on them, you can always get a little bit better. It's the trouble is when you kind of put your head in the sand and say, it has to be this way. I don't have any other choices. It has to be this way. And that is maybe a nice little way to segue back into this idea of the myth of stability. Like, I almost I almost proposed to somebody that I did not like, and she didn't like me either. But we both felt like we were supposed to do this. Like, the rules were, we had a good relationship, like, not great. It was a good relationship, not great. We both mostly liked each other, but not entirely. And we had some disagreements in what we wanted our relationship to be, but they weren't like, they weren't deal breakers. They were just sort of like, we just kind of didn't want exactly the same things. And we could probably compromise on that, right? We could make that work. And ultimately it turned into this problem where we were like kind of thinking about stability, the marriage, the et cetera, as being like, well, that's like the safe choice. That's like, what if we don't do this and it turns into like we both end up alone, right? This fear of, what if this is the last chance I get? Um, and so we were close, like we were so close to like getting married. And had I not done that, or had I done that, I would have 100% ended up in a divorce. Like 100%. There's no chance that she and I would have lasted. We were just trying to talk ourselves into it because it felt stable, and like upending our lives and figuring out how to, we had moved in together and stuff. Like, figuring out how to untangle all that was just like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's just easier to stay together. And that was a really terrible. And like, at one point, we both independently had conversations with people who told us later, we were both thinking that. We were both like, it's just so much work to untangle things. I think it's just easier to stay together. Like, what a terrible basis for a relationship. but it felt stable. It felt like something that was safe. And the unknown was unstable. It was unsafe. And so we shouldn't do that, right? Like what if it goes really bad? Um, and that also was like that was where I think I really made the shift toward thinking about friendship, right? Because I think when me and this woman got together, we got together because we were both looking to get serious. Like our we had dating profiles, and our dating profiles were both like, serious relationships only interested in, the what. And so we both came into it with like this kind of false expectation that like I am only looking for the love of my life and I will not accept anybody else. And so when we got along at all, we just sort of assigned all of the rest of it to that other person without ever going through the motions of being like, how much do we actually like each other? Like, if a romantic relationship wasn't on the table, would we still hang out? Like, if we were, you know, like if we were both like, because I'm straight, like if we were both men, would I call you to hang out? Like, would we be friends if there was no romantic relationship on the table? And in hindsight, the answer was no. We would not have been friends because we didn't have enough overlap, and we weren't the types of personalities that were like really compatible with each other. And we were going off this whole like, well, romantic relationships work because opposites attract, right? Like that was the whole thing. We balance each other out, but we didn't. We just pissed each other off. And so when I got out of that relationship and I started thinking about it, like, okay, so treat everybody as if like sexuality doesn't exist. What if every relationship you enter into is strictly on the basis of would you be friends with this person if your entire relationship was platonic? You are going to spend time with them, make jokes with them, hang out. You will never, ever, ever do anything romantic with them. Would you still hang out? And I again, this was one of those. I was just like, I was in the right place. I was ready to hear it. The idea sunk in, and I just started going on dates, knowing for. And this was like such a big change for me because again, very interested in like the hooking up part when I was younger. And so this time, I went on dates, and it was like, I'm not hooking up. Like even if this goes really well, nothing on the first date. We are just friends. Like we're nothing at all. And if that is not good, if that doesn't feel right, I think this isn't somebody that I would last with long term because we wouldn't be friends. And that ended up being such an interesting shift for me because again, it's like the optimizations are all in very different directions. But when I met Marissa and I we ended up on like 3 dates where we like absolutely nothing happened. We just like we sat around, we talked for hours. We were supposed to go see a movie, but we went to get dinner, and then we were gonna go. There was like playing a movie in the park. And I remember we sat down at that dinner and then didn't really realize we weren't watching the time. And then they like closed the restaurant around us. We completely lost the movie. And we had just like had this conversation that was so good. And we were both like, it wasn't, I always make this joke. A lot of times, some of the, like, this happened to Marissa where she would go on a date and somebody would talk at her for the entire date. And then at the end, they'd be like, I feel like I know you so well. I want to be clear. That's not what happened. I was also listening. But like we were just friends, and we got along really, really well, to the point that we were kind of calling each other just because it was fun to talk, right? That wasn't a thing that was happening in previous relationships. And it was the sort of thing that like when I make friends now, that's what I'm looking for. But like in the past, it would only happen with other guys because I wasn't romantically interested in men. So when I met a guy and we clicked like that, I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna be friends forever. Like we'll hang out. But when I'd meet women and we click like that, I would be like, well, I don't want to have sex with you, so it's probably not gonna work out. And I would just walk away from it like we couldn't be friends. So anyways, that was an interesting shift for me in my life, and again, wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done the like stability thing. Um, how do you find a girlfriend who does web dev? You hang out with more web devs, like go to conferences, go to meetups, try to be in places. But again, don't go out looking for a girlfriend. Go out looking for friends, and it's going to make such a huge, huge, huge difference. What's going on, Mark? Good to see you. First time on the live. Thanks for hanging out. See you soon. Um, How do you find your passion and purpose in the tech industry? I would say the only answer I have, and this is a very frustrating answer, and I'm very sorry, keep shipping different stuff. Like, keep trying as much as you can, and don't think about it as like my purpose is to find my place in tech. Think about it as like, what do I want to do with my time? Where do I find value? Like, I did this exercise. I got a blog post that I wrote on it that I'm going to share in the thing somewhere. Give me a second to find it. Here it is. This blog post is I guess I can share my screen to talk through it for a second. So this was a blog post that I wrote a while back, and it was in response to a conversation. Like, I had been talking to a handful of people about I was in a management position, and so we were talking about like, how do you advance in your career? How do you find something that like doesn't just make you money, but that like makes you happy that you do what you do? And so the I had this conversation with Sarah Drasner where she did this exercise that was sort of like she had like 4 boxes, and in hers it was like, pick the things that are important to you and then try to make sure that the things you do fit into most of those boxes. Um, and that was like kind of helpful, but what I found was that my big thing is that I always make the joke that a career is a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. And so if you do a thing, you'll get offered more of that thing. And that's generally speaking how you build your career is you do a project, somebody sees that project, they go, hey, that was pretty good. Do you want to do one of those for me? And so on it goes, right? You build your career through this chain of work that you put out into the world. And what I was finding was that I had things that I was good at that I kept getting offered, and I would do them because I wanted to advance, but I didn't like them. And so this is a different approach here. And so what I did was I looked at it as a matrix, and I think I did a drawing of this. Let's see. Yeah. So I looked at it as this is a matrix where there are things that I find energizing and there are things that I find draining. So what I mean by that is when I cook a meal for my friends, I am very tired at the end, but I'm stoked. Like, I had a great time. I'm so excited I got to spend time with my friends. I want to do more of that. And so it's very energizing to me. Like, the act of doing that type of project makes me very happy. When I work on Web Dev Challenge, for example, I get to bring a bunch of people together. We get to do these really cool things. I get to spend physical time with people. It's exhausting. It's like, a week and a half of me just doing as much as I can to prep for this thing. I cook dinner for everybody when they're here. I have to book reservations. I'm making sure that we've got the crew ready. Like, all of this stuff is happening. And I'm exhausted at the end of one of these. Like, I did 2 of them back to back to end the season, and I thought I was gonna die. Like, just slept for a full day. But I was super energized by it. Like, it was hard, but it felt really good to do it. Now, contrast that with something like email. When I have to write a lot of emails, I don't leave that feeling really good. I actually leave that feeling very emotionally drained, and it sort of like saps my will to keep doing stuff. Similarly, I found that leadership planning was really hard for me because I would get to do the plan, which was really fun, but then I didn't get to do the work, which was really draining. And so I found that being in leadership in a non-practicing leadership position was actually pretty draining for me because I didn't get to, like, I like the collaboration part, and I like the collaboration in an actually physically building things sort of way. I like to take a project and divvy up the work and like everybody goes and does something. That's really fun. I get a lot of energy from that. Telling everybody what to do and then like not helping them, watching them do it, and then like telling them whether or not they did a good job. That was sort of at odds with me. I didn't like it. It didn't feel like I didn't get the energy from that I did when I was when I was a principal engineer. I worked with teams. We'd kind of put together a project and assemble the right people to do the thing, and then we'd all divvy up the work and go. When I was a VP, I couldn't do that. I one, didn't have time, and two, it's kind of In my opinion, when you're a VP, it's sort of a failure if you're in the work because you're like not giving your attention to the things that people need from you so that you can do something that's fun, which is like coding a thing, but you're not an IC anymore. Um, so that's energizing to draining. Then there's bad at and good at it, right? And so along this bottom axis, there's whether you're bad at something, whether you're good at something, and all of these I kind of see as being ranges, not like true false values. And so there were things that I was really good at. Like I'm really good at like solutions engineering, like getting on a sales call with somebody, talking through their problems and helping them understand how they could fit a certain thing into their tech stack. And it was a thing that the sales team would call us in to do sometimes. And I was really good at it. I didn't find it particularly energizing. It wasn't like bottom of the barrel draining, but it probably sat around like here, right? Like I didn't love doing it, but I was really good at it. So maybe around over here. Um, Doing like video stuff, for example, was something that I started out like over here. I loved it and I was terrible at it. Like the videos sucked, my pacing was bad, everything was too long, everything wasn't edited very well. So I was bad at it, but I loved doing it. And over time, I kind of moved it over to where I still don't think I'm good at it, but I think I'm okay at it, right? And so what I encourage people to do is to start looking at where you spend your time in a given day and start charting it on a matrix like this and look for where your time is spent. Because if most of what you're doing is down here, like you're good at it and people keep giving you more of it because you're good at it, but you hate it, this is not the way you want to spend your time. This is a guaranteed recipe for burnout because you aren't doing things that give you energy. You're only doing things that drain you. And now so for example, I spend most of my time now here. I would say I'm pretty good at the things I do, and I mostly do things that I really, really enjoy. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't things that I'm bad at. For example, I had to produce a larger commercial, and I hadn't done any of that stuff before. Like I'd never worked with a location manager or a talent scout or stuff like that. I was bad at it, but it was pretty energizing actually. Like, so I was over here. And then sometimes I have to do things like taxes. And I am both bad at that and it drains the hell out of me, right? So I'm working with an accountant, but I still have to like do a bunch of paperwork and pull a bunch of CSV files. Oh, hate it. All down here. But that happens once a year. Most of my time is spent up here. And that's very much by intention. When I went to build Code TV, it wasn't, well, let's see what happens. I was looking at how I was spending my time inside of Netlify. I was looking at how I'd previously spent my time at Gatsby and at Copter Labs before that, my agency, and all the things that I had done. And I was looking at like, what were the things that really made me want to keep going? And what were the things that made me want to quit? And then how good or bad am I at those things? And what I found was that there were a lot of things that I was bad at that were really energizing because I didn't have the time to focus on them. And there were a lot of things I was really good at that I hated that I kept doing because that was how I could make money. So I started looking at how I could shift. While I was at Netlify, I started shifting video forward. And while I was at when I was in the VP role, I started thinking like, are there things that I can get rid of over here to get me closer to this thing? And what I found was there really weren't. Like it was really, really, really hard to delegate the stuff that was most draining about being a VP. So give me just 1 second. I think somebody just came in. The water. I left him the note. He's hopefully going to do that, but I just want to make sure it doesn't do. Marissa walked in. But yeah, so that's really where I've found to be like this to me is such a useful tool because it's also a tool that evolves over time. We were talking earlier about how to optimize, like choose what you're optimizing for. And like when I was toward the end of my career at Netlify, I was specifically optimizing for pulling things from here over to here. Like that was a huge part of my energy was trying to move things that I wanted to do for work into a place where I was competent enough that I could do them for work. And I've then since spent, I think when I started Code TV, I was maybe here. And I think I've like moved over to like here, right? And I think I'm still trying to pull things over, but now I'm starting to think about other stuff. Like I don't really like a lot of the logistical stuff. I'm pretty good at it. So now I'm looking at like, I don't know, is 2026 the year that I try to hire somebody so that they can take this? And because they'll be good at it and they like it because the right person for that job is going to put logistics and organization and making sure that all the trains are running on time. That's going to fall here for them, right? That's the person I want to hire for this job because then it comes off my plate and I spend more of my time up in my stuff, ideas, execution, building things, doing the productions. Like I love that stuff. It's so much fun. So I want to be up here, right? So that to me is, but I wouldn't have been able to do this optimization 2 years ago, right? There was no chance. And so these are the sorts of things that like the continual reassessment of where you're spending your time and how that's affecting your energy levels, I think is really important. And it's going to shift over time. Like when I was in like 2018, making a tutorial was here. Today, making a tutorial is down here. It just doesn't give me the same energy that it used to give me. It honestly just feels, I don't know. I don't want to teach people how to use AI, right? It's not as fun. And I hope that that'll change and we'll get stuff back here where it's time to make more tutorials. But in the meantime, I want to do these productions. I want to do people building stuff together. That's where my energy is up here. But yeah, so what's happening, Mark? I'm happy you're here. So, Mark and I have been cooking on how we're gonna get fleet heat back. We got some ideas. But yeah. Not that you never do the things you don't like and are bad at, but they're not the majority of your time. 100%. If you're trying to move towards something that energizes you and maybe your current role isn't hitting that, do you think a slow transition in your off time is better than a leap into the unknown? I'm going to give you the senior engineer answer and say it depends. If you have a really, really clear idea of what it is you want to do and you have a safety net, fuck it, cut the ripcord, go do the thing, right? Because you have enough safety to try it. You'll have full mental capacity to put yourself into it, and you'll know how long your runway goes for, so you know how long you have to finish it, right? Those are the right constraints to give you the chance to go. If you don't have all of those things, like you know that you want to do something different, but you're not quite sure what it is, maybe you don't have the runway, maybe you know something else is going on, I would say do it in your free time because you don't have a clear target to shoot at, right? And you don't have the stability to take the full run at it. So you want to give yourself maximum chance of succeeding. And I think that if fulfillment is something that you really, really, really know what it is, then just go do it, right? If you've got a path toward like how you would get paid to do it or how you would get paid some other way to allow you to do this thing. That's the other option, right? Like I think there is a world where you can do a job for the money and do the thing that energizes you in your off hours. And that could be like, go get a job like IBM that's very 9 to 5 that, you're not you can leave your computer at work and you're just done. You just collect a good salary to do work. You do good work, but it's not who you are. It's not what you care about, right? I think that is such a respectable way to do things. And then you spend your time on the stuff that does energize you. And that could be anything from hanging out with your family to having a hobby to, maybe you just want to make art and never sell it because selling it would take the fun out of it. Like there's so many ways that you can exist in this world that energize you that don't have to be tied to your income. But you have to be able to do the job in a way that doesn't drain you so that you still have energy to do the thing that gives you energy when you're done. Right. And I think that's also really, really hard. But I think like that's that. The other thing too, I think the other thing is when possible, and it may be more possible than it seems. And I'll give you an example after I say this. When possible, see if you can work the things that give you energy into your job. Like, is there a world where you can start pulling some of these things that you want to do into your day-to-day? I have a few examples that I think could work. So one example, when I was at Netlify, I had been doing Learn with Jason since 2018. I joined Netlify at the end of 2019. I knew that I was enjoying streaming, but like I hadn't done anything more produced. So when we started getting into like, I knew I wanted to do more with video. I got the company to let me use my education budget or some kind of stipend to upgrade my camera. Like that was the big. I upgraded my camera and I upgraded my microphone to this one actually, the SM7B, and that was kind of like the first little upgrade I did. And so that was cool. I got the company to kind of help me expand what I was capable of doing, and then I was like, okay, what projects could I propose that would allow me to do more? Like, could I do more video inside Netlify in a way that helps the company? And so I thought about it, and I the first opportunity that we had was we in 2020 we had to do, or 2020 or 2021, one of them, we had to do a remote conference, and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. We have to be remote. Let's not just do webcams. Let's do this. Let's do something more. So I had this whole proposal around how we were going to do it, and an opportunity for us to like work with an agency that had all this video capability. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And some of you may remember that was the year that a bird flew into a transformer, knocked out power for the whole neighborhood, and we had to like scramble to make this thing work. But it still worked, and we still did what I think was a great live stream. It was something unique. We hadn't really seen it before. We shot all of the like, you know, the interstitials, the host MC tracks were kind of shot in a very 90s sitcom way. We did interstitials for the sponsors that were like, you remember when you would watch like The Simpsons or something, and at the end it would be like, sit, boo boo, sit. And it was that, you know, that little like stinger for the production company. We made those for our sponsors. And so those would play after talks and stuff. It was really fun. Like so much fun, really enjoyed it, but I got to do it as part of my job. Right. And then leaning on the success of that, I pushed forward like, hey, what if we made a commercial for Netlify? That would be, and my argument was, we're doing a ton of video stuff. We know it's working. We can see that like the team's presence in tutorials and podcasts and all this stuff that we're doing is helpful. Can we make something that's good enough that we could run advertising against it and be able to sort of scale the impact of video for Netlify? So we made this thing called A Tale of Two Universes, which I can show you here. Here we did this, and so this is the full length one, and then these are like cut downs of those that have like a little bit of extra stuff. And so this series was and you can find this, I think this is on my, yeah, it's on the Code TV playlist channel. You can find this one if you don't want to copy paste that link. But like this was a chance for me to do something way more produced. And again, I worked with a production company. I didn't do this myself. Let me mute this. But like look at this. We were able to, you know, there was set design, there was like lighting and stuff. We did this whole thing. This was aggressive, you know. We had costume, we had makeup, we flew the whole team together to do this thing. We put Phil in a closet. We did all this production design. Like there was this was actually a great moment. We had Ben give this is my wife, Marissa. And she, oh my God, I still love that so much. But anyway, so this was like a whole thing. We got to do this incredible stuff that we never would have been able to do before. And I worked it into my job. And then I saw how this was done. I learned a little bit more about it, and I was like, okay, I can take this further, right? And so we were able to do even a little bit more. And I talked them into doing this other series, which was a series that Phil had cooked up, which was this Ship It Faster series. And these were like even more unhinged, where we dressed up Phil as a robot. And the idea was, you know, we wanted to show your CMS as a member of the team. And so we made him like this kind of difficult coworker. And so this was, you know, me and again, Marissa, wrestling Phil so that we could install a plugin. And so we got to do like full, you know, this is huge costume design, a lot of production design. we shot the whole thing. I helped the team, like the team and I wrote it together, and it was like, this was incredible. It was like such a whole thing. And then this gave me a confidence that I was like, okay, we hired an agency, but I think now I could do this on my own. And so then it became like, let's take it a step further. And where did my gets in here? Yeah. So then I was able to, like, this was the first thing I did with Code TV, not the ad. Why am I getting ads? I'm signed in. I'm on the wrong account. So this one, I did this with DevCycle, and this was the first thing that I produced. Like, I got to work on this. I did the writing and co-directed it, and like, this was a huge lift and something that we got to do. It was incredible. But this, like, I wouldn't have been able to do this had I not maneuvered toward it when I was at Netlify, because this, I was independent for this, right? This was not something that I would have been able to do right out of the gate. Otherwise, I would have needed to walk toward it in the same way that I did while I was at Netlify. So I was able to leverage the fact that the things I was doing could benefit Netlify and allow me to start working toward the skill set that I wanted. So when I was talking about, dragging video from over here to over here, this is what I did at Netlify. Like, when I made those first things, I was like, okay, I have no idea how to do this. And we just kind of ratcheted toward over here. And I would say that by the time I started Code TV, I was here. And then every project that we've done, we've just ratcheted a little bit further over toward, like, being good at it. And I know it's energizing, so it's where I want to spend my time. These are the sorts of things that I think, like, our job is to try to identify what will make us happier and more fulfilled. And that isn't necessarily a straight line, and it isn't necessarily a clear answer. For me, it's a certain level of creative output. And that could be in video, that could be in building something, that could be in writing, that could be in building something with code. Like when we did Dev Squares, the game that I did with Will Johnson, the thing that I ended up building was this whole, like, multi-screen multiplayer app for us to be able to play the game, like, with the audience, and with the everything we did was like this whole kind of real-time app. Building that app was so freaking energizing in a way that production code hadn't been in a really long time. But it was like this unique creative output to solve this problem that I hadn't really solved before. It was really hard, really weird, lots of weird edge cases. Still doesn't quite work all the way, but man, it was fun. Right? Like, these are the sorts of projects that I think give me tons of energy. And so my goal isn't, like, to figure out what my purpose is as a singular, like, I will discover my purpose and I will perform my purpose until I die. It's more recognizing that, like, my process has shifted over time, but the common thread through it all is hard problems that require creativity and collaboration. And if I'm doing those three things, I usually get energy out of the end result. So if I can push on that, then maybe it's an event install, maybe it's a video production, maybe it's something I haven't tried yet. Maybe someday I throw a conference, maybe someday I end up doing a local meetup or something entirely different. I don't know. I'm still talking about how I can pivot to going and doing food TV, right? Like, wouldn't that be great? But all these things are things that I can't say this is what I want to be when I grow up. I just know what I want to do right now. There's this quote. I brought this up a few times on stream before, so forgive me if you heard this one before. But I had this great conversation with a friend of mine who was a pretty successful guy. And I asked him a similar question, like, how do you decide what you're supposed to be doing? And what he said to me was, you got to treat everything like it's the best idea you've ever had until you get new information and there's a new best idea. Just go all in. You are doing this forever for now, right? Your whole heart goes into the thing. You're going to do it like it's the last thing you'll ever do. And also, you're going to continue gathering information. And when you have gathered enough information that you realize there's something else, just change your worldview. Right? You can do a different thing. And sometimes that's a big shift, but a lot of times it's just a nudge. And I would say that while it seems huge that I went from being the VP of developer experience at Netlify to a quote unquote TV producer, because I think I have to say that in quotes still. That seems like a very large shift. But if you look at the trajectory, if you look at the projects I was working on, it was actually a pretty gradual nudge of I was working with the community to make good stuff about being a dev. I started making that more video focused, and eventually I tapered off some of the like writing and educational and speaking stuff to focus more on the video production and entertainment side of things. But it wasn't a hard shift. It wasn't like I blew up one career to start a new one. I literally stepped one step to the right and changed my title. The work, the day-to-day work wasn't all that different, except for the fact that I wasn't in leadership anymore. So I got a bunch of my time back, right? So that I think is an important thing when we're talking about how do you do that? Is this used in marketing material outside of posting it on YouTube? Some of it is, right? So some of the stuff that I do is used as like pre-roll ads, or it's put in landing pages. It can be done as you run it as promoted media on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. And in a couple cases, we've talked about like, what if we just bought advertising on like Hulu and Amazon Prime? It also gets used as, for example, if DevCycle sponsors a conference, I don't know if they still use it, but for a while they would put this up as the video that would play, which a lot of times at a conference you may have seen, they don't have a plan for that. So they get told, hey, we need like a 60-second thing. And it ends up being a product manager reading a script on their webcam, which is fine, but it's not as fun. It's not as engaging, and it's not as memorable because everybody is, they all kind of look the same. It's a webcam and somebody saying like, if you're looking to get thing, here's my product, and a screen share, and then it's over. Doing something that really stands out gives you a big advantage. And I think that's why I have so much fun with this, is that you can't do the same thing every time, because if you do, it just starts to look the same and it won't have that power. It doesn't stand out the way that you want it to stand out. So you have to be weird and creative and do something a little different every time, which is very well suited to what gives me energy. But yeah, that's another great reason to surround yourself with. Yes, exactly. You surround yourself with people you like, and it makes it way easier to do that stuff. Like, this is one of the things I love about my group of friends. And if you watch the videos that I make, you'll see the same people come up over and over again in them. And it's because these are the people who they're just in. They're like down to do something. They want to try something fun. They want to be weird. They have a good time. They're creative. And when you find people like that, it just gets so much easier to do, because you can, when you can text your friends and be like, I got this weird idea. You want to try it? It's a little theater kid-esque. And they go, oh yeah, I'm in 100%. What time you need me there? Right? It just like the world gets a lot more fun when you've got this group of people around you that they enjoy the same things you enjoy. And like, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be into what I'm into, but the people that have an overlap with my Venn diagram are people that just infinitely improve my life. Because when I have a weird idea, I've got somebody I can talk to about it. I've got friends who work in video production, friends who work in tech leadership, friends who work in various types of open source and, engineering and art and design, and all these people in my life are just delightful weirdos with these vastly different but sort of overlapping interests. And all of them have a little center on the Venn diagram with me that's like something we all really care about, or something that they and I really care about. And that, it just makes it so much fun, because I'm not just talking to people who only like what I like. Like, I think this is one of the things that maybe bummed me out about, or like why it took the energizing stuff out of doing tutorials, was I felt like when I made tutorials, I would try to, and like, you can go and watch these. It's not like I was really pushing the envelope, but like I would try to make them fun. I would try to do something a little bit different. And really all anybody wanted to talk about was the code itself. And I just didn't, I don't know. I just felt like I was talking to people who only had one interest. And I like code, but I like code for what it makes possible, not for itself. I don't really like discussing the intricacies of what code is. I like the intricacies of what it unlocks, like what it makes us capable of doing. And so tutorials became this sort of kind of like feature comparison, like, well, this is slightly different than, Vue and React compare like this, and these are the trade-offs. And I didn't like sometimes it's fun to debate that stuff, and that's a part of my personality and a part of what I like to do, but it's not the whole thing. And I felt like some of the stuff I was making was putting me into this box of like that's all I talk about, and those are the only people I talk to. I wanted more variety. I wanted more weirdos. I crave novelty, and I crave um, experiences that sort of push me slightly out of my comfort zone. And I think that, yeah, that would be a big thing. Dev Square's event in person, heck yeah. What's up, Shruti? Good to see you. Thanks for hanging out, Linda. Have a good day. And then oh yeah, we got like 30 minutes left. But yeah, I think like, to me, the whole point is to find as many opportunities and outlets as you can to explore things that you have an interest in, right? I think that's such a big it's such a like going back to that whole idea of like, try to die without regrets. If you get an opportunity to explore something, even if exploring it just makes you realize, yeah, that wasn't actually that fun. Do it. Like, what's the harm in learning that you don't like something? Like, I remember we tried to eat vegan for a while, and the trade-offs to us weren't worth it. We felt better, but it was so hard that it wasn't energizing. It was really draining. Whereas, like eating a more whole foods diet, where the things that we eat, we try not to get the processed stuff, that was more energizing because we enjoyed that part. Like trying to find something that like fills the urge for like, okay, well, this is sort of like cheese, but it's not cheese. Like I'd rather just have the cheese, but getting cheese that isn't made with a bunch of preservatives, it's kind of fun to go to the cheesemonger. I enjoy that. So for me, that was like I tried a thing. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it opened this other door that ended up being something I really enjoyed. And that's a like kind of a throwaway example, but I think it really gets to the core of like people who know me well know that like I always joke about like vegans being the biggest pain in the ass, because when I have to cook something and somebody's vegan, it like throws my entire world into disarray because now I'm cooking 2 meals. And so I complain about vegans in a loving ish like I love all my friends, even the ones who are vegans, which I think is phrased exactly how it should be for you to understand my complicated relationship with veganism. But even like despite that, I still feel that it was a great exercise to like actually embrace the vegan diet for a while, because it was an opportunity to one, get a little more empathy for what people are eating, and also get a little more creative with like how you can prepare food when you have different constraints. But it also allowed me to understand like what I do and don't appreciate about that diet, so that I could make better choices for myself. Like it improved the way I eat despite not being the way I eat, if that makes any sense. And I think that a lot of my choices throughout the years have been things that I was like, well, maybe I'll try this. And you try it and it's not what you want, but you learn something that you didn't know before, which makes you more capable of making a good decision for yourself in the future, even though it'll be a different decision from the one you made. It's that idea. I think Linda took off, but the idea of going, like learning from mistakes, kind of like iterating forward through failure, and learning how to experience that failure in a way that doesn't make you feel like you are miserable, to me is really critical. And I think that exploring as many pathways as you can is a really critical part of developing that skill set, and also just developing enough awareness of the world to be able to know what you do and don't like. Like I think maybe another way to put that is, I've talked about this idea of the adjacent possible, where when you start, you're in this room that has a bunch of doors in it, and you can only see the doors that you can see. And every time you open a door, there are additional doors beyond it. Now, you can't skip doors, right? You can only go through the first door to find the second door. If you don't open as many doors as possible, you don't get to know what the possibilities are, right? And so when I meet people who say things like, oh, well, I never really tried that because I'm not good at math, or, oh, I could never do that, I'm not much of a performer. It's somebody who's effectively closed off an entire skill tree, not because they are incapable, but because they've decided before they ever tried it that nothing in that skill tree could possibly appeal to them. And I find that to be a huge bummer because to me that would be like opening up a list of like classes you could take and saying I'm only going to look at page 6. What about all the other? You don't even know what they are. You're not even going to like try to find out what could be out there. And like, sure, I'm not going to be a professional swimmer, but that doesn't mean I'll never swim, right? I'll try it. Marissa's always trying to get me to do water sports. And like, I don't particularly like water sports. And a lot of my reasoning is that I don't like activities that take longer to set up and tear down than the activities themselves. And I could just like hard nope on this, but I'll do whatever the thing is. Like if she wants me to go paddleboard, I'll go paddleboard. I'm not saying I won't do it. It's just not really the thing I want to do. And it's if there's an option where she can go paddleboard with a friend who likes paddleboarding, I will read a book on the beach until she's done paddleboarding, and then we'll do something that we both enjoy. That's, I think, a perfectly acceptable way to go. But I didn't just say no. I didn't say no. That's not for me. I tried it, and I was like, yeah, here's the reasons I don't like that. And in a lot of cases, there's stuff that I tried that I thought I wouldn't like that I really enjoyed. I remember being really, really hesitant to join an RPG. Like my friend Robin, when I was living in Austin, he started Rogue Trader 40K, and he was like, yeah, come play. It's role playing. It's very fun. I was like D&D, and he's like, yeah. I was like, I don't know, man. That doesn't seem like it's for me. And he was like, well, no pressure. You don't have to go. And then Marissa and I talked about it. We were both kind of uncomfortable, but I was like, we should at least try it. Like and we told him, we were like, is it okay if we come and we like play a game or two and it's just not for us? Can you like kill us off? And he's like, yeah, of course. And so we showed up and we ended up playing that for years. And we've since joined other groups for D&D, not because I would consider myself to be a D&D person so much. Like I still don't know most of the rules, but it's really fun to get around with a group of your friends and just basically do improv. Right. And improv with a good set of rules is just really fun. And honestly, like I probably wouldn't start a D&D game, but I would happily join one. And I now know that sort of like improv stuff is in fact really fun. And it became part of what I love about a lot of what I do. Like almost everything I do now is unscripted. And I kind of learned that was very fun through making choices that maybe weren't the thing that I loved, but were a thing that I wanted to write off immediately as not for me. So my point being, kind of getting back to a question that was like so many questions ago, is if you're trying to figure out what is your thing, if you don't have a really clear vision of it, just try literally everything. Like posit a question and then go answer it and keep going wider and wider, because if you do some ceramics, you might find that ceramics weren't great, but you really liked the mold making. And if you did the mold making, you actually really might like, I don't know, like bronze casting or some other form of art that involves mold making. Or maybe what you really want to do is get into like the 3D modeling so that you can do 3D models of different things and then build a mold around that 3D model so that you can make a lot of different versions of that thing. Like there's so many interesting ways that you can go down that road, and you start it by tugging at a thread. Maybe I'm into ceramics. Nope, not into that, but I like this part about it. What else can I do with that? Right? It creates this ability to sort of look at life as an endless menu, a Cheesecake Factory menu, so to speak, of things that you could do. And there's literally no rules about which ones you do. You are a 40-year-old man and you want to try ballet? Get out there, champ. Go do it. Because who cares, right? I took salsa lessons a couple years back, and I have never danced in my entire life. And I was out there trying to shake my hips, doing the whole thing. I'm not good at it, but I had a really good time, right? And I am since still trying to figure out how to make an excuse to get somebody to pay me to hire a choreographer so that we can do a really funny, stupid dance, right? Like I love the idea of doing that stuff, and I love the idea of like finding different ways to incorporate different things that I'm uncomfortable with into little projects just to see like what happens. What if we do that? So anyways, all of that is a really, really long walk around this idea of try not to close any doors on yourself and try not to leave doors unexplored if you've got the option. Hassle getting half and half without carrageenan, monon, disodium phosphate. Wait, hold on. What's happening? I'm clearly not following, that was a lot of science that I don't know. Um, yeah, trying it reveals what you actually care about, and I think that's really, really fun. Um, and this is maybe the strongest point out of all of this. Very few things can be accurately, gamed out if you haven't done them before. Like, you don't know what it feels like to try a thing if you've never tried the thing, and so no amount of, like, planning and analysis is gonna give you that information. Like, if you had asked me years and years ago if I was gonna enjoy making pasta or something, I would have been like, "No, I don't like the mess. I don't think that it's gonna make that big of a difference. I don't, like, I can go buy fresh pasta from somebody whose job is making fresh pasta, and that's definitely gonna be better than the pasta I make." All those things are true. I still don't like the mess. I still don't like the hassle of having to do it, but the experience of building a party around everybody making their own pasta and then you cook it together, it doesn't matter that it's not as good as the pasta we could have gone and gotten for probably cheaper than what we spent on the ingredients to make the pasta ourselves. We have this, like, great memory of screwing a thing up together and, like, laughing at how big of a mess we made and how mid our pasta is despite how much effort we put into it. And it turns out that part is worth it to me. And I never ever would have been able to pick that up in analysis because I didn't know that that was even a part of the experience, right? Like, and this is why I think it's so important to just give things a shot, right? Because there's these little delightful surprises that you get when you do a thing that you wouldn't have otherwise picked up. It's the sort of like unrelated experiences or incidental experiences that aren't the main thing that help you build a better worldview of what makes you happy. And that gives you more things to pursue. Um, yeah, when you learn new technologies, the format of the Web Dev Challenge is really fun. It's a good way to set it up around your friends and if you're in like a cohort or whatever. 'Cause it's low stakes, like, do a thing, hackathons have been around for a really long time, and I think that, like, a hackathon is usually over a weekend or it's a few days. I don't really like the idea of staying up all night. It's just not doesn't appeal to me, but, 4 to 8 hours to do a thing, like, that's pretty fun, and, having some kinda low stakes thing about it, like a demo or small prizes or something like that is also it's just really fun. Um Oh, right, 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 discussing, unprocessed foods, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have a really hard time, I have also just learned, like, as I've gotten older that some of the processed foods just straight up make me feel bad, and I didn't know that until I stopped eating them, so that was another thing, like, the worst one is I've just been betrayed by bread. I love bread. Bread is, like, my favorite thing. Nothing makes me happier than bread, and when I eat bread, I feel bad, and I get bloated, and I gain weight, and so I can't eat as much bread, which I'm trying to take as one of those signs from the universe or whatever that things you love should be experienced in small bursts of intense love. Uh, which is actually I don't believe that at all. No, but I try to go in moderation, and I realize that like if we make the bread, it doesn't mess with me much because I know what went into it. There's no preservatives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so it's an incentive to like if I really want bread, I should just make some bread or talk Marissa into making some bread. um, anyways, I let's see. Do I have anything else to talk about? Does anybody have any? We got 20 minutes left. How is everyone doing? What's going on out in the world? Um, I have properly hydrated today, and it's been about 2 hours, and I got to use the restroom. So give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. All right. Okay. So what are we doing? We're doing, let's see. What's new? Oh, you know what's new? I just found out that a talk I gave went live, and I am going to share that because I think this one is more from a leadership side of things. But this was let me share the screen here for a second. This is a talk that I wrote. It was a keynote I gave at Lead Dev New York, which was a month and a half ago or so. October 30th, a month ago. God, man, what is time? But anyways, this is a talk that I gave that is sort of all the assumptions I had when I took on the VP job, how all of them went pretty poorly based against my assumptions, and then what I had to change to actually make things work. I feel like this is one of the better talks I've given, mainly because I think it embraces like what I like, which is just sort of being bluntly honest about the things that aren't working, which is not, I don't know. I feel like sometimes my talks are sort of, they have historically been a little like rah. And I think that's good. I think being inspirational is good, but I also feel like I sometimes lean on being inspirational to avoid being like vulnerable about something, if that makes sense. And so this is one where I basically just talk about all the ways I've screwed up for quite a while. And I think it's good. I liked it. I thought it was good. You got laid off in September, taking time to figure out your next career move. I can applaud that. I think it's good to take some time and if you have the ability, right? Like the thing that's hard is, you know, if you've got the safety net and you have the ability to sort of chill and get bored. This is let me take a step back and try to state this. It's what I'm actually trying to say and not just wander toward it. When I had that contract that allowed me to work very, very few hours per week, it created this space where I needed a while. I think it took me like a year to recover from burnout because of how poorly I treated my body and my, everything for that time. But when I got to a point where I wasn't burnt out anymore, that was when I hit my existential crisis, and I started thinking about like, what am I here for? What's the purpose of all of this? The thing that I found that was really interesting was that it went from being got to have a job, got to have something to do, to a sort of the safety net of this light contract created this space where it was like, okay, well, now it's not like got to have a job. It's what job matters? What matters to me? What is the purpose of all this? What do I actually want to do? And I've since kind of adopted this idea of we need to get bored sometimes. And I don't know how to describe this in a term that doesn't sound quite so flippant, but if we don't let our brains disengage long enough to feel boredom, it's really difficult to start the exploration toward what the next thing might be. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of times there's a thing I want to do, but the thing I want to do is big. I'll give you an example. My next My next weird thing that I wanna do is I want to figure out how to do, woodcut printing, and in order to do that, there's specialized supplies, or you gotta find a class or a place that will let you rent those supplies, and then you gotta, like, kinda learn how to do the thing, and then once you've learned how to do the carving itself, you also have to learn how to make prints from that carving, and there's a bunch of specialized stuff around that, and my reasoning for doing this isn't that I wanna, like, turn it into a job or a career or anything like that. It's just like a thing that I'm like, that would be kind of a fun little side quest for a very specific thing that I wanna do. So, if I'm gonna do that, I need to have enough mental energy that I can blow it all for multiple days in a row on doing this thing that's gonna be deeply frustrating because it's a thing that I don't have any of the requisite skills for. So, if I try to do it on my weekends when I am, like, super busy in the middle of projects, it's gonna be I'll spend my day, like, burning energy trying to get set up for it, and then I won't have the energy left to do the thing, and then I'll, like, kinda lose momentum, get back into the week, work through the week, and the next weekend, like, maybe I'll summon up the energy to do it, but ultimately it becomes this sort of, like, big overbearing thing that I told myself I was gonna do, and now it feels like an obligation, and it's really, really hard to get up and running, and I just can't get a rhythm going with the thing. Now contrast that to being bored, where I'm sitting on this idea, it's a thing that I wanna do. I managed to create, say, 2 weeks of nothing, 2 weeks of vacation, right? Like 2 or even better, a month of vacation where I'm sitting on my ass and I'm doing nothing. Maybe I'll spend the first few days being, just recovering, like doing nothing, just reading, sitting, wasting time. But then I kind of run out of the ability to do that. Like, how long can I really just sit and do nothing? Like, maybe I'll read a book, but like, I'm not going to read 2 books. I'm not going to read 4 books. Eventually I'm going to need something to do. Now I can burn that time. I can just get on social media and shut my brain off, and 2 weeks will pass and it moves on. But if I'm good, and sometimes I'm good and sometimes I'm bad, if I'm good, I will give myself, like, some allowance for that stuff, but I'll try to, like, turn it off after a little bit and say, "Okay, I've looked at social media for, like, 6 hours. I gotta stop doing that." And then I just sort of force myself to sit. And if I sit and I don't have something to distract me, like, I'm not just scrolling through Twitter, I'm not, I can try to read a book, I can try to, organize the house. Like, there's a million little things I can do, but I can't do one of the things that's sort of an attention sink, like social media. If I do that, I will eventually get so bored that I will need to do something else, and I'll have this, like, surplus of energy, and I've got an uninterrupted like, string of days, and this is how I end up doing something like rebuilding my entire studio. Like, this is one of those projects. These walls behind me are stage flats, and that wall back here, that's a stage flat, and the decorations, some of them are things that I have just had that I've kind of assembled, and some of them are things that I went out and got. And I just had this period of a few weeks where I didn't have any big projects, and I got bored, and I like had enough energy, and I was like, I've been meaning to do that for a while. Let's do it. So I called Jack Harrington. I was like, Jack, help me build, like, wood stuff. He loves a wood project. I was like, let's make this happen. And he was like, hell yeah, let's do it. And so Jack and I worked on this thing, and he showed me how to do some woodworking. And then when he left, I finished the project and I did more of it. I painted all the flats, and it was like this thing. I'd never done any of it before, but I had enough energy because I was bored, and I had an uninterrupted span of time where I could, like, really pursue this thing. And what I learned is I definitely do not want to do stage building, right? I am so happy that I did it. The quality of my work is questionable at best, and my interest in, like, continuing to do it and getting better at it is virtually zero. It was very, very fun to learn how to do it. I will happily pay somebody to solve that problem for me next time. It just isn't a thing that was very valuable to me. By contrast, when I learned how to cook, when I learned how to, I don't know, do lighting for all this, like, all my lighting that's going on here, that was all stuff that I actually really enjoyed, and having the time to dig into it and figure out how it works and specialize it, get the right equipment, do the practice. I've really found that rewarding, and I would never have done it if I hadn't had the boredom to give me the space to do the thing. And so, for me, in a break between things, if I have the ability to do so, I almost try to force, 2 weeks to a month of sitting quietly and, like, taking away the distraction so that I will get bored and I will end up tackling some, like, harebrained thing that I never would have done in a normal week because I just who's got the time for that? Like, what a waste of time and energy, but it's great for me because it sort of engages me in a new way, and a lot of times I'll discover little things that I do and don't like, and that helps me make better decisions in the future. So learning how to do woodcut, almost positive that's not gonna be a big part of my personality going forward, but I'll get a big sense of accomplishment for having done it. It solves a super niche problem that I have, and it gives me, like, it'll give me some insights into some things that I've never done that before. Like, what does it take to carve wood? I don't know. I kinda know. I watched some YouTube videos, but, like, I've never done it. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm gonna learn about myself, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I think is probably gonna be easy. There's some stuff I was watching, I was like, I think I could do that." It's probably gonna be way harder than I think, and some of it that I think is gonna be impossible, maybe it's super easy. Who knows? But I'm gonna learn, and I'm gonna do these things, and there's no way I would ever learn that stuff without being bored. Um, and I think that boredom is just such a critical part of the cycle. I don't know how to do all that. Um, when I'm bored, I get creative by accident. Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, these days, nowhere is a stable place of employment. Like web agencies are not stable places of employment. I think this is like the big challenge. There is no such thing as stability. Going back to this myth of stability, we we can build systems that give us more resilience, but there's no such thing as a guarantee. Like, there's no company you can join that won't lay you off. There's no business or industry that you can get into that is entirely future proof. There's no way to guarantee that you will have a job next month. It just isn't possible. But what you can do is you can find ways to build out your own resilience. And so in my case, my choice was to start a company and to make sure that I build enough runway in the company that I'm able to survive if I don't have any work for a few months. And hopefully, within that few months, I will line up more work, that'll allow me to rebuild the savings. And if that's not the case, hopefully I'll realize it early enough that I can go start looking for other work before my savings runs out, right? And that's as much stability as I can create. That's my safety net. And that would also be true if I worked at a company. I can hope that if they fired me, if they laid me off, that I get 3 months severance. Can I guarantee that? No. Is there any promise of stability? No. A really good company might give me 6. Really shitty company might give me 90 days, maybe 2 weeks. Who's to say? They're not really legally required to do anything in the US. So my stability is so if I'm at that company, I should probably be building up the safety net so that I can survive without a paycheck for a few months while I figure out what to do next, right? So what to me is different between working at a company and building up a safety net in case I get laid off, and working for myself and building up a safety net so that I can keep the thing going if I don't have invoices. I find that it is more stable, in my humble opinion, to have your own thing, because in a slow month, that's not you getting fired. That's the industry having a slow month. You can go out and get a new client and it just comes back, right? You're not fired. Your business just didn't have a good month. And that feast and famine is really common. But like, when a company hits a famine month, they lay a bunch of people off and you don't come back when they have a feast month, right? They'll hire new people, or you can go reapply for your job and go through that same terrible application process and hope for the best. Um, but if you own your own thing, if you're the one in charge, you kind of get to determine the risk profile. Like, at what point do you give up and try for something new? For me, it would be if I'm 3 months into my runway and I can't get any new business. Well, maybe this is past its prime and I need to get onto something new. If I But, like, if I get business, keep it rolling, right? Like, if I go a slow month, like, a slow month is a slow month. It happens to everybody. Like, but I get to make that call. I have the stability. Like, I'm the one in control, which to me is that's what stability is like, I am the currently the conductor of my own uh, train to the future, right? Like nobody can just disconnect the car I'm in and leave me behind and say like, sorry, we had to downsize due to changing market circumstances. Like if that choice happens and I say, sorry, this business isn't going to make it, that's me looking at myself in the mirror saying, all right, man, you tried it. It's not going to work. Do something different. Right. But like, if it's going to fail, I want to be the one that fails it. I don't want to have to find out that some accountant did some creative accounting and decided that I was not worth keeping. That sucks. That's like, what stability is that? Anyways, that's just being grumps. Want a job, but you don't know where to find one. Right now, getting a job is really hard. And the way to do it, in my opinion, is to focus on your community. Most jobs right now, there are more jobs being open than I've seen in a while. And that means that people are hiring. And what I've noticed is that because there is a really high number of applicants, companies are focusing on warm introductions. So being a strong member of a community, being visible, being helpful, being supportive of your community, shipping work in public, like building things for your portfolio, shipping those publicly, making a little write-up of like how you did and why, or even just like a little piece of it, like, hey, this was a cool little thing that I did. Anything that makes you visible as a practitioner and that gives other people a thing that will allow them to see who you are and what you're capable of, and you being part of those communities so that people say, I like that person. I think they would be cool if they were on my team. You get a huge advantage out of that because somebody's going to see your work, which means they know what you do in a pie eating contest where the prize is more pie, right? That's what your career is. So if you're putting work out there, people will see that work and they say, that's what you're capable of. So then when they see somebody asking for that type of work, they're going to run through their mental list of like, because like, especially folks in positions like mine, I get asked all the time, do you know anybody who would, who's maybe looking for a dev experience or a DevRel job? Companies ask me that all the time. And I run through my list of who do I know who's been consistently putting good stuff out into the community, who's been a good community member, somebody that I would vouch for, who's looking for work. And if I have an answer, I will give them that name. And usually they're going to get an interview, right? Now, it's not a guarantee of a job. I'm not saying that I have like, there's not like this super secret network going on here. It's just people are overwhelmed by tons and tons of applications, many of which are botted. And if somebody's like blanketing the earth by applying to literally every job, they're probably not even aware of what your job is. They're just trying to get hired anywhere. They don't give a shit about your company. They're not going to do good work. So instead, you want to find people that are referred because you know they're a good person. You have somebody that's in your network saying, I would vouch for this person. I would work for them. So be somebody that people will vouch for, right? Show up, do the work, be present, be supportive, be a participant, be a fan, be a supporter, like make people better around you, show them what you're capable of, and they will recommend you for a job. It's not fast. It's not scientific, but it will work. And I've seen it work for literally everybody who's done it. So not a quick solution, but a guaranteed solution. Anyways, we're at time. Man, that last 30 minutes flew. I thought I was going to end early, and then y'all threw me down a rabbit hole. I threw me down a rabbit hole. Somebody's fault. It's not my fault. As one of the Vinnies here, I can blame them. Anyways, so it is Thanksgiving week in the United States, which means there is no stream on Thursday. That's U.S. Thanksgiving. I will be soup chefing for Marissa is doing a prime rib. My brother's doing a leek soup, cream of leek soup. I'm very excited about that. I think I'm doing something with potatoes. Who knows? But yeah, so we got a big day of cooking ahead. So I won't be doing a show on Thanksgiving. I am also not doing a show the week after because I will be at AWS reInvent. So if you're going to be at reInvent, let me know. Come find me. I've never been before. It's in Vegas, which is not my favorite place in the world to be, but I'm excited to see some of the people that I know are going to be there. And I don't know, I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that this opens up some doors. I got a couple meetings booked that maybe next year could be really, really fun. Week after that, we got the Angular team coming on. I'm not sure if that is Mark or somebody on Mark's team, but Angular just launched V21. And if you haven't seen it yet, actually, let me throw a little love to them, because this was such a good launch. Where's my guy, Mark Texan? Where's this video? Here. This is so dope. Go check this out. This is a cool video they did. My only complaint about this video is that I didn't get to be part of it. This is such a fun little thing, but they did like a Mark gets sucked into the computer thing. Anyways, it's amazing. It's a lot of fun. Angular's got a bunch of cool new features, and they're going to come teach us about those on the 11th, I think. The 11th is the next Thursday that we'll be live. So that's the game, y'all. We're gonna everybody have a great holiday if you're in the US. If you're not in the US, enjoy the quiet of all the people in the US not bothering you about work stuff. And we will see you next time.